For those that I haven't met, I'm John Bello. Welcome to our first meeting for the Virginia Saltwater Sportfishing Association. Make that first annual meeting. We have come a long way within 1 year, from 14 people on our initial development call to over 504 people or members today. It's unfortunate that we couldn't fill this room, but I do thank you all for coming. We have a tight agenda. I'm not going to take any of your time. You can see what we're going to do here. If you have questions, please ask them or actually write them down so we can keep this organized. And with that, I'm simply going to turn it over to our president, Mike Avery.
Thanks, John.
You're welcome.
Just so everyone knows, we are videoing this session, and so those who can't be here today, they can dial into the internet, and they're going to be hearing this live over the internet. So just so you know that. So if you have a question, too, we may hand you a microphone so your question can be heard. Even though it could be heard in here, the only way for the video world to hear it is over the microphone. Thanks for coming, everybody. Really appreciate those that took the time to drive out. We knew that there's probably a large number of people on the water. I do the same thing. If it's a good marine forecast and it's a good day, I'm going to the water. And I say if it's a bad forecast, then I'll go to whatever event is going on that weekend. And so I think there's a lot of people probably that would have come if the forecast wasn't perfect. But today's one of the best forecasts we've had in a very long time. And that's probably where I'd be right now if we didn't already plan this. As John said, we've come a long way. It was March of last year that you probably saw some tidal fish internet chatter about trying to start an organization. And so it was just a year ago today that we started getting together with some anglers that were concerned. We had some teleconferences and some meetings, and I think we've come a really long way in a short amount of time. One of the things that we wanted to do in VISA, and one of our founding principles is we don't want our opinions and positions to be that of just a select few on the board. We desperately want angler opinions out there, whether they're members or not. We want to reach out to the angling community and figure out what the angling community wants to see happen regarding our bay and our fish. We don't want to just promote our personal agendas out there, and there's a lot of people and organizations that promote personal agendas, and we don't want to do that. We want to try to figure out, and I'll be honest, we're still wrestling with the actual tools of how to do that. How do you do the polling? How do you reach out to the community? Tidal fish and fishing message boards are kind of dying. Facebook is kind of taken over, but that only has a limited amount of reach depending on who your friends are. So we're still working with tools on how to reach out to the angling public, but that's really what we're about. What do the anglers want to see happen, and how can we represent those as we go to fishery management meetings and so on and so forth? And so that's still a work in progress. We're still having discussions about, hey, what happens when 60% want this and the other 40% want this? How do we represent that? Because if we push forward with the 60%, which is the majority, the other 40% feel like, well, I'm not happy because you're not doing what my opinion is. And so we're still trying to fine-tune all of that. We do have some officer reports this morning, and we're going to kind of rocket through the officer reports, and that's just to kind of let you know kind of where we've been, where we think we're going, and we're going to rocket through those. And we do have John Bull at 10 o'clock, our VMRC commissioner, who's supposed to talk to us about how anglers can get involved in the fishery management process and what's going on, and he'll be here to answer your questions too. And in fact, he just walked in the door. Welcome, John.
Morning, everyone.
Just grab a seat anywhere. So at 10 o'clock, we have Mr. Bull is going to talk to us. And then right after he's done, we're going to have a town hall forum. So if you have, and that's where we're really going to get down to what is it you guys are interested in? What do you guys want to see happen? A quick history here. You can see it was a year ago, pretty much today, we started getting together. And we didn't have anything but just some guys talking on telephone and emailing each other back and forth. But then we all said, hey, yes, let's do this thing. We got together in May, and we've been using this word interim because we essentially voted ourselves into as board members and as officers. And we weren't really formally elected by anybody because we didn't have members yet. So everything we've said, we were interims. So we had bylaws. We approved those in June. We actually put our officers in place in June. We became incorporated with the state of Virginia in July. In August, we sent off our 501c3 application, and we had a long discussion about do we want to be a C3 or a C4. And a C3 allows members' contributions to be tax deductible, but it limits our ability to get into political lobbying and writing checks to politicians. And so if you're a C4, your contributions are not tax deductible, but you can more freely lobby. So we decided we wanted to start out as a C3 for now, and if we ever got really large, we might branch off and have a separate C4 for if we wanted to do the lobbying part. As you know, what happened with our menhaden in the General Assembly, we probably needed more on the lobbying side. But right now, we're a C3. If you have any questions about the legal aspects of that, you can talk to us offline. And we established our bank account in August. So we didn't even ask for members until August. So there was a long period of time between when we got started and we started asking for dues for members, and we wanted to make sure that we had everything in place, and we did everything legally by the letter of the law before we asked for dues from anybody. As a lot of you are aware, there's a lot of individuals and small organizations who they have a cause, they get everybody fired up, they start a GoFundMe page, and people start throwing money into a GoFundMe page. And I'm not trying to discourage anyone from contributing to an organization like that, but we didn't want to do that because when you give money to VISA, we want to have a board of officers, a treasurer, and a secretary, and all the legal mechanisms in place so when those funds come to VISA, they're overseen properly and it's done legally. An individual starting a GoFundMe page to raise money for whatever, you don't know how that money is going to be being spent. Some of those guys are writing checks to themselves. So I'm just saying, I'm not trying to name names or anything. I'm just saying be careful when you give donations to GoFundMe pages for these types of activities because you don't know where the money, how it's being spent, and who's using that money for what. With VISA, you know because we're transparent. We're going to operate with transparency, and we're going to continue to do that. So we did start some monthly live YouTube seminars. Some of you have probably seen some of them where you can just dial into YouTube and watch a fishing seminar. We've done 4 of them so far, and we have some planned every month. We've been outreaching to the clubs, and we've gotten somewhat involved in several of the fish species already. And not all of them involve, lobbying to the VMRC. A lot of them involve the federal agencies and the regional councils that manage those fisheries. Oftentimes, the VMRC, you might think they have latitude, but it's all coming down from some regional council or some higher federal agency, and they don't have a lot of leeway in a lot of cases. We got together back in January of this year, and we said, okay, we've had our bylaws in place for a little while, and we just did some tweaks, and we're here today. We have an initial draft, what we call an action plan for the fish. And you may have seen some of this floating around. I don't want to get into all these right now. We want to kind of save this for the town hall forum. But this will, in our opinion, will always be draft. This will be perpetually draft because these are not our personal issues. These will come from the angling public. And so these may change. We may take fish off. We may add fish. But each one of these things we're concerned about, and we want to try to work towards what the anglers want to see for each one of these fish. And we'll talk more about this during the town hall forum. Some of our other initial priorities, and we've done a lot of these, we've reached out to the clubs. We opened ourselves up for general membership. We've been showing up at fishery management meetings to the extent possible. We're working on a plan for a membership drive, how to reach out beyond where we've been reaching, how to get those guys, up in the northern neck, up in Fredericksburg, up in D.C., who love the saltwater fish. We're trying to figure out how to reach out to those guys. And we're working on a fundraising plan. Right now, almost all of our funds that we have has come from just dues, $25 at a time. So we're not cash rich right now. This is our interim board of directors that we put in place. And what's important here is we didn't want to be an association grounded in Hampton Roads. And so you see there, we have our initial board kind of comes from all over the state. And these are our interim officers. I'm what I call the reluctant president. If you've ever been involved in even a fishing club, when it comes time to decide who the officers are, it's like, okay, who wants to be president? Nobody talks, crickets, and so it's kind of, in fact, most of us kind of reluctantly stepped into some of these positions, and so, but this is kind of where we are now. Here's kind of our plan for 2016, what we think we're going to do. We want to have more town hall meetings, and we're going to do some of them at the fishing clubs. We're going to do some of them in person, but I think most of them will be virtual because we've got anglers all over the state. And I know it's tough to get in your car and drive somewhere. If you live way up north somewhere or way out west, it's tough to drive somewhere. So we're going to do more over telephone conference or over the internet. We're looking to figure out how we can have better tools when we try to poll the anglers. Right now our tools are kind of crude. We poll on Tidal Fish, we poll on Facebook, we send emails out to members, and people are participating. We're trying to figure out, can we do things like SurveyMonkey or other more robust tools to figure out what the public wants to see. So we're working on that, and we've got a lot of ideas. Unfortunately, a lot of the tools, even like SurveyMonkey, that everybody wants money. Monthly fees, so much per month. We need more volunteers, and Bob Reed has some sign-up sheets on some of the committees that we're hoping some of you maybe sign your name up on a committee to help us out. We want to listen very carefully to anglers' concerns and what they want to see. As I said, we don't want it to be just, we're not trying to push personal agendas on anybody. And that has been our founding principle from day one, is we don't want to do that. We want whatever positions we develop to come from the anglers and not just from the few people on the board. We want to make VISA into an organization that can make a difference. And to make a difference, we need to grow. And we actually have made a significant growth. I think we're at like 503 memberships now, which is pretty good for less than a year, I think. And we're trying to figure out how we want to raise money. We've been having all kinds of discussions. We want to have tournaments. We want to have banquets. We want to have, shows. Do we want to have? How do we want to do that? So we're open to all ideas of how to generate more funds so we can be more effective on fundraising. Okay, so that's it for me from the president. Any quick questions for me? Next up is our vice president. And I will say, one of the things, and I'm really glad Curtis joined us on our team, because he's a lawyer by trade, and he's also an angler. And so one of the things that I'm grateful for is to have him, because he's made sure that everything we do is above board and legal, and so that we're not violating anything. You want this microphone, or you want to use the other one? Okay. All right, go ahead, Curtis.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning. My name's Curtis Tomlin, and I'm an attorney, like Mike said, from Mechanicsville, Virginia, and current vice president of VSSA. First off, thank y'all for coming this morning, taking some time to come out, and for those that have joined, thanks for joining. We're just getting going, but it's exciting to be here at the first ever annual meeting, and I can only hope that into the future I can attend a few more of these, because in my opinion, if this organization is excelling, then our fisheries are benefiting, and even an angler like myself with subpar skills gets to catch and keep a few more fish, like to think. But before I get into my legal jumbo, I wanted to speak a little bit to why I got involved in the organization. And I firmly believe that the fishery management process was designed for public input. And right now, I think it's a little too difficult for the average recreational angler to get involved. So, I don't pretend to be a fisheries management scientist or anything, but I think there are scientific and technical hurdles that the average recreational angler gets intimidated by and doesn't get involved. They might have a fear of the process or an ignorance of not knowing how to get involved. So I hope this organization can work to ease that and make it a little easier for the recreational angler, and that's kind of why I got involved. So now I just wanted to lay out some of where we've been as far as like legal foundation. We're trying to do it right, trying to get these policies in place so that we can grow and have the infrastructure to grow properly. So first thing we did was filed our articles of incorporation with the state of Virginia. We're a non-stock corporation. And then began the work of the real nuts and bolts of how the organization's going to operate when we got together and drafted the bylaws. Like Mike mentioned, we really wanted the members to elect the officers. That was the big thing. We want the members to control. So hopefully into the future, more capable. I'm not going to say the board isn't qualified, but the cream of the crop would come to the surface and get involved after we set up the infrastructure and show their purpose and got our membership up. From there, we went and worked on our Form 1023, which was the application to be a 501c3, which brings with it a host of legal requirements and operational best practices that we're still working to implement. We filed Form 102 with the state of Virginia. This enabled us to solicit charitable donations. And then we have a host of policies that try to keep us complying with the law, but also their best management practices for nonprofits. Nonprofits come under a lot of heat, not just from the IRS, but auditing organizations, and you want to have these policies in place. Our conflicts of interest policies prevents a board member from benefiting financially or personally from the organization's actions. We have a survey that we fill out. We have a documents retention policy, which basically says how long we're going to keep our documents. We don't want to have too many for too long. We have a public transparency policy, which is what documents we have to have publicly available to comply with the law. And then, most importantly, we have a financial controls policy, which basically tracks the money, who has different layers of oversight of the money, and who makes the budgeting decisions. So with the 501c3, it brings a host of annual requirements that we have to abide by, the biggest being Form 990. Right now, we're small, so that's our annual tax filing, and it's really not that involved right now. We have to update Virginia on how much solicitation we're doing, and we file Form 100. And then Mike mentioned it briefly. As a 501c3, we're limited on the amount of political activity that we can do. And a lot of people are like, oh, political activity, but it's actually really narrow. Political activity is narrowly defined, and it's mostly just lobbying, donating to campaigns. So we elected to have our amount of political activity measured by our budget, which means we can't spend more than about 20% on political activity. It's a limitation to keep in mind. And then we kind of, operational, always need to keep a paper trail, whether it's board minutes, committee minutes, or especially our finances. We want to be able to show how we made the decisions on money and board activity. So I've been probably wearing out the legal policies a little more than the board would care to listen to, but I think it's really important that we get these things right while we're small and start using and implementing these policies so we can grow. We have a strong foundation to grow on. I think that was really important, and I think we have developed that strong foundation. So that's about it for the legalese, but I did have a few just observations that I wanted to share that I think are important. Mike mentioned it earlier, and that is, can we or should we even try to represent multiple viewpoints of our members, or do we just pick one of the majority? You know, we kind of need some members' insights on that. I think there's no straight answer for that. Some issues you can do it, some issues you can't. You know, if we can do a poll and 30% says I like X, 40% says I like Y, and then 30% more says I like Z, then I think we can reflect that and reflect the other concerns, but some issues we may have to take one position. Another thing to consider and that we need some input on is how much involvement does the organization want in peripheral issues to fisheries management? So I use water quality as the example. Do we want any role in those issues, or do we just focus on fisheries only? I'm of the opinion that for now we need to focus on fisheries management and building the infrastructure to get the public recreational angler involved. But at the same time, there is the value of building your nonprofit network and working with some other nonprofits on some issues outside of directly fisheries management. So we kind of need to feel that out a little bit more. And then a little broader speaking, I think some things to keep in mind are how can we help the regulators? What information do they need? We need to build the relationship so we know what they need and how we can help them. But at the same time, we also want to educate and engage the recreational angler on the issues that are going on and set up the infrastructure to make it easy for them if they want to get involved. So I think moving forward, we just keep those broad goals in mind and stay flexible, and we can use trial and error. We'll use Facebook, the message boards, whatever other outlets for public involvement that we can use, and we'll really be able to accomplish our task. And I look forward to working with some of y'all and making that happen into the future. And thanks again for coming. Think about volunteering, and thank you.
All right. So here we got some ground to make up. My name is Brent Bosher. I'm from Mechanicsville. I love to fish, and I think we're doing some good stuff here. Just a little bit of the history. Had our first teleconference in March last year. I think I was actually fishing the James River on the bank with a phone on speakerphone, listening to what was going on, and it sounded pretty exciting. Had some face-to-face meetings in June, drafted the bylaws, action plan, 501c3. Curtis already talked to you a little bit about that. And when we really started trying to get members was in about October. That was when we were kind of really ready to start that. And once we opened it up with PayPal, things really seemed to progress from there. We're up over 500 members now. Thanks to a lot of those numbers are from the affiliate clubs, but we've also had a large number of just individuals like yourselves, and we're just so excited for that. you know, it's easy for us in the VSSA to, you know, to gather input and to give an opinion as best we can to the legislators and the people making the, you know, making the laws and making the decisions. But it's also really encouraged to send those letters and things on an individual level. Unfortunately, I think you probably already know that the menhaden issue didn't even get out of committee this year, which is unfortunate. And as a John Bello is a VSSA rep asked to attend the Marine Resource Education Program, so that's pretty exciting. And obviously, the hot button topic nowadays is going to be cobia. That's yeah, I don't know about y'all, but I know come July, I would love to be, you know, 10, 15 foot off the water looking for a 4 foot long cobia to cast at. But you know, we got to get our priorities right. If we don't have that fishery open, then so I encourage you to be active in that. And I think actually that last slide right there about the 60 members, when you include the latest club that just joined, that puts us up over 100 members a month, which is a pretty good pace, I think, for a group that just got together last October. So not to take up any more time, I know we got to make up some ground, so we're okay.
Hello, I'm Murphy Sprinkle. I'm filling in for Kevin Smith, our normal treasurer, who couldn't be here today. Just looking at 2015, we got our financial stuff started. We're going to move it up. And we ended 2015 with almost $3,000 in our balance. And we spent some money on our registrations and our expenses on raising money, or accepting money through PayPal. In 2016, we've gotten some membership come in. We have spent money on some of our display things for a booth. And we, of course, have the ongoing expenses of using PayPal to accept money. We're now right at $3,000. We're not a large budget organization yet, but we're working that way. In 2016, we will improve our financial reports, file all our government reports on time, and continue reporting to the board to make sure we know where we are financially and keep our business going. We have a finance committee. I'm the chairman, Murphy Sprinkle. We have Brent Bosher, Curtis Tomlin, and Kevin Smith, our treasurer. And we're trying to work out the business plans. Our projected expenses are shown here. We have small expenses set up to just take care of the small things as we go forward. This is nothing big. This is just the operational expenses we need to keep moving. We started with individual donations and membership dues, and then the fishing club associate dues have started to kick in at $1 a person. Where we're going, we need more regulatory involvement in the sense that we need to get our members to be more regulatorily involved, and we'll need to purchase broadcast software. We need clerical help to make sure our information gets out to our membership. And the big thing of the Finance Committee is to get a business plan going for the finance part of our operation and make sure the membership is aware of what we're planning to do and how we're going to do it. Fundraising is a big issue, and we're looking for suggestions from the population to think how we can raise the money to do some of these tasks. Things that have been put forward has been to create a statewide tournament where you require membership, but you don't go out and actually do the fishing administration of a tournament like previous organizations might have tried. We can also just do statewide appeals, and we hope people who are members will respond, and others. It's been mentioned that we could go back to banquet-type fundraising. That's a longer-term thing in that it takes a while to set it up, to find out what you're going to do, and then execute the program.
Doc, you want to do this, or want me to do it for you? Where do you hide? He's pointing at me. Oh, yeah, your camera shot, right? Hey, before I hit these slides, I meant to say this in the beginning. I got a couple statistics for you. 933,818 registered recreational fishers in Virginia. That's quite a number. Retail sales, $1.019 billion in Virginia alone. As you multiply that across the rest of the industry, it contributes $1.5 billion to the Virginia economy, $441 million in wages, 12,707 direct jobs, recreational fishing, federal taxes paid, $118 million, state taxes to the state of Virginia, $103,985,000. It's a lot of money. We represent a lot of money. Okay, government affairs. The committee consists of two people so far. It's me and Dr. Allen. Dr. Allen being the chair. I'm not going to read all these to you. We did meet with John Bull early on. Very good meeting, I might add. We've taken formal positions and filed letters with ASMFC on tog, tilefish, and menhaden. I'm not going to repeat the menhaden story here. There's more to come on that. We've taken formal positions with VMRC on the winter crab dredge, release citations, and we have made suggestions on cobia, more to follow on cobia. We've worked with CBF on a couple of bills, primarily menhaden bills. We've provided letters and testimony to the General Assembly on a number of the bills that were in the General Assembly this year, and so forth and so on. As Mike said, we're trying to get to all of the meetings, which hopefully we'll continue with that. 2016 plans, obviously we need more members, so if any of you guys want to help us out, I know Frank has volunteered to give us some hand. Tom Powers has also volunteered to give us a hand, and hopefully David has too, but we'd take all the help that we can get. We do want to continue the communications with the fishing clubs. Not only, we just don't want to broadcast. We really need the input back so that we can represent the entire recreational spectrum. So we will continue to do that. Doc Allen's got a great list of people across the state, which we started out with, and we have at least communicated with all the clubs. We haven't been in front of them yet due to their schedules, but we do plan to do that in the next couple of months. Obviously, we will continue the participation with ASMFC and VMRC, and I might add to that list National Marine Fisheries now that cobia is really in play, and then we'll continue to seek input on our message board. Just for grins, how many people know about the message board where we have all the fisheries issues that Mike showed you earlier? I encourage you guys, post on that. We're looking for opinions. When it started out, there were only 3 of us that were putting things up there, and as I looked at it yesterday, there's not a whole lot of input in the last couple of weeks. So if you have something to say, I encourage you, just log on and do it. We're looking for input, and we're using that vehicle. And then, of course, we will take a formal position on cobia as as developments continue. So anybody wants to volunteer, you don't have to raise your hand now. You can sign up in the back. If we need your help, we need your input. We encourage your input. And with that, anybody have any questions on this? If not, I'm going to offer you a quick 10-minute break.
Oh, wait. Let's do one thing first before we break.
Go ahead.
Jerry Aycock.
Oh, I forgot about him. He's out front.
Yeah, why don't you go grab Jerry and tell him to come up with the ballots.
Yeah, we're going to talk about, we are going to have a formal election. By the way, while Jerry's coming, we do have coffee, tea, and water in the back, and of course the restroom's right here too. So, utilize it. If you want coffee, get your coffee, water, whatever the case may be.
Did you tally the results?
I tallied the votes.
I mean, guys.
And by the way, while we're on the break, if you have a question you don't want to ask publicly, there are cards in the back. You can write them down, and then I will represent the questions to everybody. I'm going to give you this since you're going to run the election. After you're done, we're going to take a 10-minute break.
Let me tell you how long this is going to take.
All right.
Every vote was unanimous, period. The only other thing I've got to say is we need your help We need some people on committees. It's not going to take a lot of effort on your part, but if you don't do it, nobody's going to do it. And we got to have you do it.
Now, it's funny, back in May of last year, we were having some meetings up in Greentop in Richmond. They got a nice meeting room they give us, and we've been meeting up there just to have a central location. John Bello was the one that told me back in May, he said, now, you guys should fully expect that the board we have in place as interim will probably be the board we have when we actually have elections. And I was like, no, come on, surely we'll get some more people volunteer. But we didn't have anyone else step forward. I mean, we advertised that any member is eligible to be a board member, but nobody stepped forward. And so our 2015 interim directors, board members, are going to be the 2016.
So everybody's already voted that's here, right?
Everybody's here's got a ballot. They voted.
Voted, yes.
So what happens after that, though, is you just voted us all in as board officers. We meet later to determine, and we arm wrestle and fight and argue about who's going to be
Who's going to have to do this job?
who's going to be the officers versus other. So you'll see later. That's not, you don't vote in the president and vice president. You just vote us in as board members, and then everyone tries to run for the hills when we say who wants to be president, and so that'll follow later, and you'll know that after we have our meeting.
All coming to the board meetings.
Well,
Because if you
we've
stay
been,
home, you get elected to do something.
That's right.
we've had a telephone meeting every Thursday this year, and it's getting pretty old.
We missed Christmas.
Yeah, we missed Christmas, yeah.
And New Year's, but
But we've had a meeting every Thursday. We're going to vote later to maybe do it twice a month, and hopefully eventually once a month, unless there's a button pushing issue. But we're bringing a board member in from each affiliate club. So we've got 2 new board members. And,
we do have. I would introduce, if you guys haven't met them, it's Jerry Hughes and Mike Ruggles back here. They're our newest board members, and they were on the ballot, so we've just confirmed them as our new board members. And as our fishing clubs join as affiliates, we offer them a seat on the board, and so our board may grow as the affiliate membership grows. And so, but we had to go through the process. I mean, we have it in our bylaws to go through this process, and I think we did.
we followed the bylaws.
We followed our bylaws, and so we're.
You have to approve me as a member?
We just did.
You know the club
No, you're
authorized me to.
you're a member.
You're a board member.
You're a member
Your
of
official signed seal,
you're-
and I'll stamp you later.
you're a Visa member already, and you're now an official board member through elections.
Through election.
Yeah, you were on the ballot. That people, as they walked in the door, and you were handed a ballot when you came in, right?
No, I was here early.
Okay.
My question is, Great Bridge Fishermen's Association joined it, okay?
As an affiliate group, yes.
And I am their representative, okay?
He's got to use the
But
mic.
you have to approve me, is that what I'm hearing?
You are already approved as a board member and a Visa member. So there's nothing else has to be done.
But I had to be formally approved before I was actually a member.
In accordance with our bylaws, as a board member is nominated, the board members has to just to say, yeah, we accept Jerry Hughes as a board member. And we did that via an email vote. There's no dissension, there's no issues, and we don't ever see that ever being an issue. But we have to follow our own bylaws. And so a new board member has to be one, elected and approved by the board. And we went through that process.
Yeah, and when we drafted the bylaws, we really wanted to emphasize, as we grow, having the members elect the board. And we really hadn't thought about the clubs nominating someone directly. So for now, what we had to do as a board was say, all right, y'all nominated a member, and we adopt him until we do the elections per the bylaws, and then you become the official. But that was just, it's something we can amend the bylaws so that the nomination is directly official. But for now, to comply with the bylaws, we had to. Does that make sense?
If I quit the Great Bridge Fishermen's Association and they send somebody else next month,
if you decide that you don't, if you would rather, if somebody else from Great Bridge wants to be a board member and you would rather take a step back, we'll work that too. That's no issue. I mean, I know it's a big commitment on time for you to be involved because you're also in the Virginia Beach Club, the Great Bridge Club, and they're both active clubs. And, you know, so I get that. That's a lot of time constraints on you. So if someone from the Great Bridge says, okay, we want to swap Jerry out with someone else, we'll work that, and we'll.
Yeah.
Then we just have to do a verbal vote with the board and say, yeah, we accept so and so, and whoever the Great Bridge Club sends, it won't be an issue. You know, as long as the Great Bridge Club approves it, there's no issue with visa, and the board members will all say, yep, we accept whoever. It's more of a formality, just following our bylaws. So if you didn't fill out a ballot and you want to fill out a ballot, you can. It probably won't affect anything, but as everyone walked in, they were offered a ballot. We got some ballots in via email. So we said, if the email blast that went out, we said, hey, if you can't be here, vote via absentee ballot via email. And we got several in over the email, and then we got those who came here. But that's the process, you know.
But the votes did come back. It's 100%. I don't think we expect any different. We'd like to have somebody else. I'm sure some of us in the group have. I mean, it's been a hard year. It's been a long, hard year to fight to get where we are. And like I said, it's 100%. So, but on a side note, I'd just like to say that I want to thank everybody for coming. I expected we'd have a small group the first year. Hopefully next year we can fill this place up. Because I think we are going to be a voice for the average angler. We're going to come up and say, this is what the average angler wants. That's what we're for. And we're going to have to come up with a percentage of how we do that. As far as the committees, not a lot of people signed up, and we really need you on a committee. Everybody in here, it's not going to take a lot of your time. Find something you're passionate about and offer to help. That's what we need. Thanks again.
All right, let's,
5-minute break?
I'll just say, yeah, let's go 10.
All right, 10-minute break.
That way you have time to go to the restroom, you have time to get coffee, water, tea, whatever, and when we come back, we'll have our guest speaker. So 10 minutes, and we're going to keep this thing moving.
Yeah, I brought a power.
This is what shows up, just so you know, people that dial in.
Oh, no, that's good.
That's kind of cool.
Excellent.
All right, let's get back, please. Grab a seat. How many questions? You got more? No, I haven't got them yet.
Is this for the Joel?
We got everybody out of the lobby. We're on schedule, by the way, in case you're interested. Our mission is to have you out of here by 12:30. Once we go through the next speaker, then we're going to open this up to talk about issues that you want to talk about relative to fishery. Our speaker today is John Bull, who is the commissioner for the Virginia Marine Resource Commission. Mike and I did meet with him back in October. Very good and very open meeting, and I appreciate the openness of the dialogue that we had. I also appreciate the fact that these guys are open to talk to on a daily basis as we need to. If you have questions for him, you can write them down or ask them yourself. We have cards that were passed out, so please do that. I think he's a good guy. I'm going to let him tell you why he actually took this job, because it's certainly a job I wouldn't want. And without that, I'm not going to take any more of your time. John Bull.
Good morning, everyone. I'm John Bull. Thank you for inviting me here. I was very happy to do this. I think it's important to keep an open dialogue with recreational fishermen in particular. I'm an open government kind of guy. You won't find a more open government kind of guy than me. I'm not a bureaucrat. I'm not a politician. I'm dedicated to our mission, and I believe in what VMRC does and why we do it. And I'm happy to talk about what we all do. I have been with the agency now for almost 9 years, and the last 2 as commissioner because the governor appointed me. And be careful what you ask for. You just might get it. Got a bit of a PowerPoint here. And I want to do this here to help explain what we do and why we do it. It's an overview. There's details. We can dive down to any of the details that you want to. But I think it's important here to understand what we do and why we do it, and what all we do and what our limitations are. So to that end, we're a state agency. We have 161 employees, budgeted positions. They're not all filled. They haven't all been filled for a long time. We're based in Newport News. Most of you know our mission. Our mission statement: we're stewards of the marine and aquatic resources, protectors of the tidal waters for present and future generations. We have a longer-term view and we have to, than what the commercial and the recreational angling communities often take. We handle tidal fisheries, both commercial and recreational. We do law enforcement. We manage the state's water bottoms. The state owns all the water bottoms in the Commonwealth, even little creeks and streams out in the middle of bloody nowhere. National Marine Fisheries Service estimates there's 900,000 people who drop a line in our tidal waters in any given year. Personally, I suspect the number is a little inflated, but it's hard to argue with the feds sometimes. I know that well. It's part of my job description. You can argue with the feds, you can argue with the dog, you can argue with the rock. It usually gets you about the same spot. 3,000 licensed commercial watermen here, and we manage the water bottoms here. So if you want to build a dock up here, a marina, expand the Midtown Tunnel, run new power lines over the Rappahannock River, build towers, you got to get a permit from us. I'll dive into this just a little bit more. Our Habitat Management Division handles those type of issues. We've been around for a long time. We're one of the older state agencies. You might not know that. We were formed in 1875, and our job was to repopulate the rivers, most of the tributaries that had been depleted by the Confederate and the Union armies during the Civil War. We got oyster duties a few years later, and one of our first missions was to stop commercial oystermen from shooting each other over who had access to the oyster grounds. And we've been fighting about oysters ever since. That was the Oyster Navy, and they became the Virginia Marine Police. The composition of the board and its structure is essentially unchanged since the 1800s. There's initially 3 commissioners, reduced to 1. This was the Board of Fisheries. The Fish Commission became the Virginia Marine Resources Commission many years later. It's still basically the same thing. The Board of the Chesapeake handled oysters, and that was turned over to us a few years later here. Interesting from my perspective, this isn't recreational fishing, but it's so that you understand, oysters have been an object of contention and a great focus of our time and energy and effort now for more than a century. But it's striking to me that the Virginia General Assembly more than 100 years ago set the template way back when, and today it's essentially unchanged. We lease the water bottoms. The water bottoms can be leased for oyster propagation. The rent rate's $1.25 an acre. It's now it was $1.25, now it's $1.50. We've changed the rent rate once since 1901. Out-of-staters can't oyster in Virginia, and the oyster seasons were set then, and they're fairly much unchanged with a few variations. Laid the cornerstones for the Virginia Marine Police at the same time. And all this was combined to Board of Fisheries, and now it's the Virginia Marine Resources Commission. Our structure is this. It's run by me as the commissioner. I'm the chairman of the board. There are 8 other appointees by various governors who sit on the board and make the final decisions. So when you look at VMRC, there's the agency and the staff that handles the bulk of the work, and the decision policymakers are right up there with the board. We have 161 positions. Most of them are Marine police officers. That's the vast majority of our complement. You will note that fisheries there has 33 positions, of which they're not all filled, and they haven't been filled for a number of years. I'll save the highlight for that later. I got a little point to make about that. Marine police, the structure of this, I think, is elegant. We manage the fisheries. We manage the habitat that these fisheries depend upon. We have the enforcement arm to make sure that it's abided by. Not all states do this. Some states have it all combined into one. Some states have it divided. There's a fishing operation, there's a law enforcement operation, there's a water bottom management operation. They're not all the same. We're different. We're different for a good reason. We have the largest estuary in North America. Chesapeake Bay is a big driver for recreational fishing and for commercial fishing. It makes sense to have this all housed in one spot. Maryland changed it. They separated their law enforcement division into another agency, and they've had nothing but problems since, because the state police do not have the same priorities as, say, the Marine Police. They're not going to be making this a focus that you would like to see, or that the commercial industries would like to see as well. So Maryland tried something different, and they regret it. So Marine Police here were aimed at abiding by the regulations, both commercial and recreational. We managed this through being on the water. We only have about 70 officers. We have about 8 supervisors. We have a dispatch center here with 6 people. We got a secretary. It's pretty lean. It's pretty mean. But if you think about it, you got like 70 Marine police officers to patrol 5,000 miles of shoreline and enough open water to drop the entire state of Delaware into it and still have leftover. We handle shellfish safe handling. Seriously, folks, if you have some questions along the way, you want to pop it up, I'll hand you the microphone and just jump on in. We got air, land, and sea. We got vehicles, we got vessels, and we got an airplane. The airplane was paid for by the federal government. The gas for the airplane is paid by the federal government. So is the maintenance. I have made the policy decision. The Marine Police main focus over the last few years has been oyster theft. And that's important, and I want you to know why. We have a growing oyster industry and a growing oyster aquaculture industry, and the private sector has been putting a lot of money of their money into the growing oysters. There's nothing that's going to curtail that growth more than having their products stolen out from under them by thieves. That entire industry will contract if thieves are allowed to continue. So we've been making sure that the gains that we've made in oyster restoration and the gains in the oyster stock is not lost and wasted to thieves. The oyster stocks have it's a great success story. A lot of different things went into this, but the oyster stocks went from 30,000 bushels in 2007, and last year we harvested 660,000 bushels. That's a lot of growth. That's a lot of benefits for the economy. More oysters in the water means more poachers. We have certainly gone after them. They have been feeling the heat. Number of summonses, all sorts of bad violations, dredging at night, dredging in condemned waters, and oyster sanctuaries. We have been hitting them where it hurts, and that is the paradigm is no longer is the penalty having to go and sit in court for half a day here and get a $50 or $100 fine. These days, you can lose your license. And they are. Over the last year, the Commission has revoked more than 50 licenses. That is more than the 20 years before that combined. And in fact, it's double what the 20 previous years were. 25 licenses were revoked from 1993 up until a few years ago, over 20 years, to 2013. In the last 3 years, 2.5 years, we've revoked more than 50. They're feeling the heat, and thieves are getting off the water. So I wanted to set that up so that you understand that we do a lot more things, and we're going to go through this a little bit faster. Fisheries management, I think that most of you understand some of the basics about what we do. There's all sorts of nuances in all of this. We handle the interstate species management plans that are established by the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. My predecessor, Jack Travel, said at one point, calculated how many species we manage. It's 87. 87 tidal species. That's if you count all the sharks, and I guess I can't tell the difference. I don't know if you can, but shark identification is outside of my area of expertise. But there's lots of them, and I can't understand which species is which, but we have people who do. We handle artificial reefs. A lot of you guys fish on those. The quotas that are established take a lot of time and staff energy and effort, and we have 18 interstate species management plans. So we have a lot of very technical expertise on staff, and we have to have a lot of very technical knowledge. The technical committees at the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, I've sat on them. If you ever have trouble sleeping, call up one of their webinars, and I guarantee you, you're out within 5 minutes. And it's way over my head. These scientists, these technical people speak a language I don't get. They understand each other, I think. So, just a few of the importance economically: blue crab, croaker, flounder, black sea bass. Yep, let me back up. Cobia pounds, that stat is very much wrong. We'll get to that in a little bit. Combined commercial and recreational fishing is a $1.3 to $1.5 billion a year economic engine. That's pretty astounding. Just some of the interstate species management plans. Crabs is not, it's a local issue, it's a bay issue, and that's a lot of effort and energy as well. The crab stocks did a big plummet over the last 20 years, but the last few years they've been building back up. We got them up an extra 35% last year. I expect some more growth. Mandatory reporting is something that we do that takes a lot of time, and it's not with the recreational anglers, but it's the commercial anglers. Commercial fishermen have to report what they catch, exactly how much they catch, every month by the 5th of the month. If they don't, we call them in before the commission. They get their hands slapped, they get put on probation. If they don't mend their ways, they get their licenses revoked. Now, this is important. We spend a lot of time and trouble and energy and effort to make sure. It's important for us to know exactly what's being taken by the commercial community. We don't do that for y'all. We can't do that for y'all. You guys wouldn't want that. You wouldn't want to have to report to us every month exactly what you caught. And we have no way of handling the hundreds of thousands of reports that would be. And I'm not about to go to the General Assembly and say, give us $2 million so that we can force all recreational anglers to report their catch monthly so that we can process them all. So that's an important point to keep in mind here. While we know exactly what the commercial industries catch, we don't know with specificity what the recreational anglers catch. That's more based on statistical models and surveys, both by phone, by mail, and by dockside intercepts with what used to be federal people on the water doing interviews. You may have run into them. And they're no longer federal employees. They're now my employees. And the feds have passed that kind of mandate down from there down to the states, and they gave us some money to do that. It's a rare and elusive, actually funded federal mandate. So we got 3 people here. They're on board. There's some other part-timers. This program is getting up and running. We'll be able to do these surveys better than the feds ever did. Who knows the water better than us? We have very experienced people here that are going to be handling this. We will have better data. Will it be the data that we all wish we had? No. Will there be disputes about what the data should show and what it does show? You betcha. Is it going to be better than what we had in the past? I'm convinced it will be. It's not going to be the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but it's certainly going to be better than what we had all had from the feds. And incidentally, while there were dockside intercepts that the feds had, the program had been up and running, and you might have run into them, the bulk of their recreational catch effort surveys were by phone. They had phone banks. This is how they did them. God, it astounds me. They would have their people, the phone banks, open the white pages of the phone book to a coastal county and dial phone numbers at random in the hopes that somebody would answer who was a recreational fisherman who had actually told them what they would catch, what they had caught. To me, that's like if you need a plumber, you open the phone book and you start dialing until somebody answers who happens to be a plumber. It was a silly concept, but they did it for years. And as a result, their efforts were inefficient, So we're going to do it better. We do biological sampling. That's important so that we can age the fish that are caught, the age of the fish that are in the bay. We can tell the gender. We can tell the sizes, what age class they probably were. And that's also very helpful. We got a ton of oyster reefs out there. They're sanctuaries. You guys don't need to know the details of how we build sanctuaries, do you? We can go back to that if you want. Okay, so we got a variety of different recreational fishing programs. The core of it, of course, is our interstate species management plans and how we handle those. We got the artificial reefs. Most of you know about them. They are indeed fish magnets. We do replenish those at least one every year. We do as many as possible. The funding isn't nearly enough to do them all. Bob Allen knows all about that. We've had some discussions about that in the past. We use materials of opportunity because we're cheap. Materials of opportunity is bureaucrat speak for donated materials. It's mostly concrete. It's mostly concrete that has been sprayed, washed, and hosed down, and it's nice and clean. And we put them on barges. We barge them out to the artificial reefs, and we deploy them. My people insist that I don't say we just dump them. I got a question.
Going back to the intercepts and gauging recreational catch, how long ago did that come from the federal government, and are there other possible or considered methods to gauge recreational catch that y'all are working on?
Yes, this was handed down by the feds a few months ago, and we have hired the people to do the program within the last 10 weeks. We're putting it together. They're out, they're doing some work already. They're looking at wave one work, and then they'll expand and even ramp up even further. This is not just dockside intercepts. The feds will continue to do an expanded male survey. So snail male survey, not female male. Got another question here.
I've gotten phone calls about the catches that I've been stopped at, and checked on. It's like 6 to 9 months after I've done it. How am I supposed to remember what I did? Can they at least remind me when they call me to say, you reported this and this and this?
The federal folks that are doing the mail survey, the mail-in surveys, and they're handling that on their own. We, of course, can, the call-in, that's also with the feds. They're not doing nearly as much of it. A lot of this is going to be devolving into snail mail surveys and the dockside intercepts that we'll be doing. So you're not going to be seeing nearly as many of those. And yes, is it really an inefficient system? And are they asking you to remember what you caught 6 months ago? Yes, they are. But that's not VMRC. That's the National Marine Fisheries Service. Another question.
Yeah, the 3,000 commercial fishermen, how is that defined? Are those include charter people or what?
Nope. That is the licensed commercial fishermen. They have to have a license from VMRC. That's about how many that we issue in a year. It doesn't really grow. It doesn't really shrink very much. It's mostly capped, and there's, by code, a 2-year waiting period to get a commercial fishing license unless you transfer it from somebody else.
Where is the demarcation state lines of responsibility between Virginia and Maryland?
The border.
Yes. Oh, it's the border?
Yeah.
There's been a number of slides that have gone through rather quickly, and it seemed like there was some great information. Will this PowerPoint be available later for members?
Yes, indeed. Yes, sir. A couple of questions, more questions.
Yeah, are we on now? Okay. Yeah, the 3,000 commercial fishermen. One of the issues that we have on the Northern Neck is that the overwhelming majority of commercial fishermen do not participate in commercial fishing. So this number is used to represent this is a large group of people, and actually, it's a very, very small group. It's much, much, much lower. Is there any, in some areas, VMRC will take away the rights of fishermen for not fishing. But for commercial fishing, they do not. And this really bothers us.
Well, as I understand the question, those are the number of licenses, around 3,000, that we issue in every year, and they're mostly renewals, and there's some new people that come into the commercial fishing industry either by transfer or after being on a 2-year waiting period. Does that number mean that every single one of them is fishes every year? No, but most of them are fished to some degree or another in a given year.
Thank you. But I'm just telling you, most of them are not fishing. They have the license, they don't use it. And I really think something should be done about that.
Well,
Thank you.
I'm basing that on the number of mandatory reports that we get. I mean, the majority of those licenses are used. We get the mandatory catch reports on a monthly basis from them. Another question.
John?
Yes, sir.
I noticed you showed a while ago, just briefly, a screen with, it had a barge there and it was offloading stuff for
Yeah, those were fossil oyster shells that are going on the public oyster grounds.
They were for reef construction?
They were for the propagation of oysters on the public water bottoms.
All right, can you answer a question for me about the reef program?
Yes, the artificial reef program, I believe it's 23 reefs. They've been in place now for decades, and every year we add some material as it becomes available to augment some of those reefs that are deteriorating. It's not nearly as much as we would like, but we have cost considerations as well.
All right, now I get to my core question.
Okay.
Because I live over there, and I cross the river quite often, James River, and I noticed the city of Newport News took down the old pier, which was the original James River Bridge. They stacked it on a barge, about 100-foot sections, and they stacked them about six high. They had a 100-ton crane over there doing it. And when I saw it, I thought, man, what excellent material for a reef. You have any idea what happened to it? Who got it?
Not off the top of my head. I'd have to check into it. I know we looked at whether or not we could obtain it. I didn't know what the cost was, but I know we looked at it. Did we get it? I don't know. I couldn't tell you standing here today. I'd have to look. There's Dr.
Allen. The comment came up about there being, the number of commercial licenses are issued. And if I'm not mistaken, John, you just need to make it clear that if somebody doesn't use their license, actively, they cannot renew it. They have to have a history of being in the fishery, year after year or for a certain number of years. Make it clear to him, I think.
With some of the permits and some of the licenses for crabbing or for oystering, well, not for oystering, it's an open, but crabbing and some of the other striped bass is another commercial fishery, they have to use it or they lose it. And that's not necessarily with their commercial licenses. The commercial licenses give them the right to sell their catch. And it's the basic entry-level license to be able to get into the commercial fishing industry. They will need other licenses for gears. They'll need other licenses for particular species. It's not really simple. They understand it because it's their jobs to understand it. John.
You haven't talked about your budget. Are you going to talk about your budget as you go through the rest of your presentation?
Let me cruise through this a little bit more. I'm covering a lot of ground real fast here, but there's a bit of method to my madness to try to get us to this point. So we also manage the water bottoms, and that involves about 2,000 applications a year. Some of them are really simple for a pier or a gazebo on a pier, and some of them are very complicated, such as when Dominion Power wants to run power lines across the James River to Jamestown. These things get complicated. I have a staff of 8 environmental engineers to handle 2,000 applications a year. Think about that for a minute. And it's a ton of acreage, and that's not including wetlands protection or some of the other complicated things that come across. They also handle the leasing of the water bottoms for oyster propagation. We've had a gold rush on leasing water bottoms. I mentioned before that it's only $1.50 an acre. We've only raised it once since Teddy Roosevelt was president. As a result, there's lots of people that don't mind speculating by leasing water bottoms because it's about as dirt cheap as you can get. And this is something that takes up a ton of staff time. We have to have professional surveyors, and we now have 123,000 acres under lease to 4,560 different leases. Takes a lot of time because they're legal documents. It's kind of like the plat that you have on your house. That's what this is. This gives them a specific right to harvest the oysters and propagate oysters on that particular section of water bottom. And the condemned waters is also another issue that we have to deal with the health department and the federal government. Incidentally, let me just put it in perspective. On any given day, not only am I dealing with issues for local fisheries management, interstate species management, on any given day, I have discussions with the Army Corps of Engineers, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the Virginia Department of Health, VDOT, God, I'm losing track of them, the Army Corps of Engineers, the Coast Guard, U.S. attorneys prosecuting federal cases. It's an unending thing. You would probably have no idea how many different state and federal agencies we interact with on a daily basis. And we do these water bottoms right there. I haven't updated it here, but it's still about the same. It's about 2,000 applications a year with 8 habitat engineers that handle them all. Thankfully, the vast majority of them are in tidewater. The inland ones are not as much. I don't think you care so much about which the legal jurisdictional boundaries are for what we are engaged in and what we're not. We handle the beaches and dunes, and we make these decisions. The commission makes these decisions with a careful balancing act. That slide is perfectly convoluted, is it not? It's not simple because each and every case is different. We're balancing economic gain, environmental protection, water quality, marine resources, all sorts of stuff. We have a very small operation of like 5 or 6 people that handle all our administrative stuff, which includes grants from the feds, from payroll, all sorts of things. I'll let that slide sink in for a minute. Yes, we've taken budget cuts every year, except for 4 years since 1989. So when you want government to do more with less, hold us up as the poster child for that. I'll throw the kicker in right now. While we do 2,000 applications to use the water bottoms here with 8 environmental engineers, our fisheries management division is staffed today, with the exception of those 3 recreational survey positions that the Fed just gave us within the last few weeks. We're staffed at the same level today as we were in 1991. We have the same number of people handling tidal fisheries, commercial and recreational, as we did before there were fishing licenses, before we had mandatory harvest reports, before we had any single, even one interstate species management plan, before we had the Marine Mammal Protection Act, before we had an oyster resource because that had crashed and burned. So we do a lot with a few. And that's why. The good news is the General Assembly just adjourned last night, adjourned sine die, which is Latin for get me the heck out of here, I think. Don't check me, that might be wrong. And I was successful in getting money out of them to fill 3 of our vacant positions in fisheries. They've been vacant since 2008. So in July, we'll be able to hire some new people, additional people. There were vacant positions. They'd been vacant. They finally gave me some of the money to fill it. We still have other vacancies, but that's the most I could talk them out of. So we'll do better with quota management. We'll do a little bit better in protecting our quotas here, both recreational and commercial, for these species that cross interstate boundaries. It's definitely a step in the right direction. I think this gets us up to about staffing levels we had back in around 1998. So do more with less. Yes?
I asked you the question back in October, what could we as recreationals do to help you relative to your budget? And at that time you said, sit back, let me handle it.
Yep.
So we've gone through the General Assembly. We haven't said a single word. I'm asking the same question again today. What can we as recreationals do to help you with VMRC's budget?
Well, at the moment, not much. The budget process works like this. The agencies and the agency heads go to the administration and the secretaries of their respective secretariats. With me, that's natural resources, the Secretary of Finance, and we do all this come August, September, and this is our wish list. And they look at it and they decide what they can bless and what they won't bless. Some administrations are very open to filling critical needs, some not as much. That's the first threshold, and that's important to get it in the governor's budget, in the governor's proposed budget. If you can do that, that gives you the right as an agency head to defend the governor's budget and the money that you got into the governor's budget. When it comes January next year, I'm willing to open for a discussion on what VISA can do to help whatever we can get into the budget next year.
One follow-up question, if I may.
Yep.
The money that has been taken in years past out of the recreational license money to fund programs that were formerly funded from the General Assembly, do we have any hope of ever getting that? Do we have any hope of using the recreational license money for its intended purpose versus those monies that were taken to fund programs that originally were funded from the General Assembly, such as Wallet Bro? I'll just throw that one out.
That's a simple question with lots of nuances and complicated answer. Let me try to make it simple because I'm blunt, and as I said before, I'm not a politician and I'm not a bureaucrat. Is it possible to reroute some of the money that comes from recreational license sales back into its intended use? Is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? No. No, and the meltdown, the economic meltdown in 2008 caused Virginia to basically take a new stance and a new look at this. And their thought was that the majority of recreational license money should be used to pay the salaries of Marine police officers that are out enforcing the recreational regulations. And is it possible that that basic policy gets changed down the road? It is. But I would tell you that my experience would be that it would be quite a hurdle to overcome. We had some more questions. Okay. Well, let me get to the one that came in online. Are the new recreational surveyors being put in place to get better data to make the ACL? Yes, to make the ACL numbers more accurate. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what we're doing and that we're intending to do here. The new surveyors, and a number of them had been part of the federal program that we've hired them. We've hired a couple very good ones here. They know our fisheries. If you know Jeff Allen is his name, he's the head of that program. He's very knowledgeable. If you ever get a chance to meet him, you're going to walk away impressed. And I hope he's not listening, but if he is, sorry, Jeff. When he interviewed the panel of my people that interviewed him, I had two of them walk up to me afterwards a few days later and said they have never been more impressed with any candidate for any position ever to apply at VMRC. So, Jeff, if you're listening, don't let that go to your head. Yes, sir.
Outside of the budgetary area, what are 2 or 3 ways in which recreational fishermen could help VMRC's multiple goals and its overall mission?
I think that's a simple question with lots of nuanced answers to it. I think at its very core, I think it would be helpful for recreational anglers to be knowledgeable about what we do and why we do it, and to raise their voices, to give their input. This is open government at its finest, at least from my perspective. We run all these fisheries decisions all come through our advisory boards. They usually take months and months of discussion before they reach a point where they're presented to the commission. The commission considers these in an open session. It's a public forum. Anybody that's in the audience is welcome, and I encourage them as I chair these meetings here to come forward to say what's on their mind. If you have something that's not on the agenda, there's a public comment period. That's been a good way in the past here to get new issues before the commission for them to at least consider whether or not to move forward on pursuing them. We do this all to be open, and it's, well, I wouldn't say it's frustrating, but I think the system would work better if anglers are a bit more involved and a bit more knowledgeable about how we do these things and why we do them. It's not as simple as walking in and saying, well, I want more. I want more of this, I want more of that, I want more, cobia, I want more red drum, I want more striped bass. You come in like that here, you're not going to get much of a hearing. If you come in with a specific reason, understanding how we've reached that point to how we've set the catch limits and a variation of that that's thought out, yeah, the commission's open to listen to these things, and so is staff. I mean, we have restrictions. Let me talk a little bit about the restrictions, because a lot of the species that you're all very interested in are migratory species, and they cross interstate boundaries. And as a result, they're managed under the auspices, under the oversight of the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. Now, they make good decisions sometimes. Sometimes they make bad decisions. And sometimes they make decisions that make me go, the what? And some of them on species that I can't even begin to understand because either we don't have them or it's so small that it really is not a big issue. And Jim Dawson, if you're listening, don't take that personally, but we have a lobster fishery. I don't know if you knew this. We have three fishermen, commercial fishermen, that fish for lobster in Virginia waters. And as a result of that, we have to sit on the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission Lobster Management Board and its technical committee. Three commercial fishermen. So if it's a species that's caught here and it's under interstate species management plans, we have to be involved. Is it the biggest thing we do? No. But does it take time and staff energy and effort? Yeah, you bet. And there's a lot of those type of fisheries. They might not be big, but they're here, at least to some degree. So, sir, yes.
My name is Jerry Hughes. I live in Chesapeake, Virginia, and I spent a lot of time on the Elizabeth River. About a year ago, something really big happened on that river. I was wondering, what is VMRC going to do to make sure that don't happen again?
Well, for the people at home here that heard that, let me expand on that a little bit. There were two fishermen, I guess I wouldn't really call them necessarily commercial fishermen, that were illegally setting nets, legal nets, and they were harvesting speckled trout and red drum, and these were blatant, and the Marine Police caught them. And we took them to court, which is what we do, and the judge convicted them.
But you had them 3 times before that and let them get away.
I'm not aware of anybody, these particular people. Oh, well, sometimes it takes a little bit of time here to build a case, and sometimes the Marine Police would like additional evidence, especially if it gets to a plea bargain in court. It's always good to have more evidence, to have a plea bargain so that you still have substantial charges. So, yes, sometimes that happens. That happens with oyster enforcement more so than some of the finfish species. But in this particular case, the people that were perpetrating this were caught and they were convicted, and the judge put one of them in jail for a substantial amount of time, and the Marine Resources Commission revoked their licenses for the maximum of 2 years, which was the maximum at the time. Now the law got it changed about a year ago. General Assembly changed it. I encouraged them to do so. The maximum revocation period is now 5 years. And I've got another nice little clause in there, is that if you fish commercially while your license is revoked, well, you're eligible for a civil penalty of up to $10,000 per event. So if you're going to make money off of our natural resources here, you're held to a higher standard from an enforcement standpoint. There are other questions?
Last summer, my party was fishing, and we came in at the dock going home, and we were approached by a person to do an audit and an interview. And we all agreed to do it.
Yes.
And he measured fish, counted fish, talked to us about where we caught them and that type thing.
Yes.
I was just wondering, is it possible to get a copy of a report when you involved in something like that?
Well, this happened. This was the recreational surveying program called MRIP that was being handled by the federal government through the National Marine Fisheries Service. That is the program that has been handed down to the states, and VMRC just took control over that and hired people for that within the last 10 weeks. So your interview was done by the federal government, by federal employees at the time, and I would have no access to it. So I guess I'm telling you that I don't have it, and it wasn't done by us. But in the future, it would be done by us, and I'll have to examine state law. As a rule of thumb here, I'm an open government guy, and if it's not specifically ineligible for public release, I'm happy to release it all. But I'll have to look. If your question is whether or not people's surveys will be releasable under open records law, let me take a closer look at that. I'm not sure. Yeah.
I have a follow-up to that. I think that you can query the federal database online and get state-specific information.
I think so, and I think it's an aggregate, though. I don't think it's at an individual level. I may be mistaken.
Oh, right. You wouldn't see your own interview information, but you'd see the total for Virginia or...
Well, you all had written down some questions here, pre-programmed here, so let me run through a couple of them here and answer your questions. Why does VMRC not have a fisheries management plan for croaker and spot? We do. It's under an interstate species management plan. It's not, these are not species that are deemed at the federal level at this point to be of concern enough to limit a catch, to invoke a catch restriction. Croaker, they're keeping a close eye on it. They call it a blinking light type of evaluation. If the stock goes down in the next assessment, there might need to be some state restrictions on catch. But at the moment for croaker and spot, the stocks are in good enough shape that we don't need, there's a management plan, but we don't need to invoke catch restrictions on that. Got a couple of cobia questions here.
Commissioner, I'm sorry.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I had a follow-up on what you just said.
Yep.
For croaker and spot in the Middle Bay area, from Smith Point down below Gwynns Island, it's a serious, serious problem for the charter boat fishermen and the recreational anglers in general. And I'll just say this, I don't agree with the attitude of looking at what ASMFC says, that there's no problem. There may be no problem ocean-wide or coast-wide, but there is a serious, serious problem in the Chesapeake Bay. We do not have the fishery that we had 8, 9, 10 years ago when I moved to Virginia, and I could count on croaker. The croaker are trapped from Cape Charles all the way up past Silver Beach. There are no croaker to speak of any size above the Rappahannock River. And that's a fact. The only thing I'm saying is I think I would like to see VMRC do more assessments in the Bay and not just take for granted that because there's no problem in the Atlantic Ocean, there may be some problems in the bay. Just consider that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Captain. I understand where you're coming from here, and there's one thing to look at it from an aggregate level, from a macro level, and it's another thing to look at it from a localized level here. And does that mean that there's plenty of croaker in the bay? The last stock assessment says yes. Does it mean that it's not locally depleted in some sections? Same with menhaden when the commercial trawlers come through. Yeah, there could be. On the other hand, doing a stock assessment is an expensive thing. Doing a bay stock assessment is an expensive thing as well here, and I will point to the budget reduction history that you see in front of you here. If we had unlimited supplies of money, I'd be very happy to have VIMS do lots of localized or just bay-specific stock assessments, but that's not something that we can possibly afford. So I understand where you're coming from here. There's good fishing in some parts of the bay for some species, not as good in other parts, and that changes species by species and place by place. Another question here before I open up the cobia stuff here is VMRC, or would VMRC conduct a study on the impact of floating gill nets on safe navigation, and would VMRC report the results of the study to VSSA? Would we conduct a study of the impact of floating gill nets on safe navigation? No, probably not. One is money, very much money. Two is navigation isn't our purview. Navigation falls to the Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries. They're the state's primary boating enforcement, boating safety agency. That would be a question that would be best addressed to them. But let me say something about gill nets, because gill nets have been raised here. There are a substantial number of commercial gill nets out there, but I think most of you would be very surprised to hear that we issue recreational gill nets. And we issue anywhere between 800 and 1,000 recreational gill net licenses a year. And I've heard lots of complaints about commercial gill netting here, but you know, about 40% of all the gill net licenses we sell go to recreational fishermen. It is what it is. So, we got cobia questions here. I'll tell you what, before we get into them, I anticipated for some reason there would be cobia questions. I am not precognitive, but I had a suspicion this would come up. So, as you all know, the Great Cobia Crisis of 2016 is we're fully involved. We've been working on this at VMRC now for about the last 3 weeks. We have daily conference calls. Sometimes they're hourly. We're working closely with the National Marine Fisheries Service and the South Atlantic Council. This species is managed by the South Atlantic Fisheries Management Council. It's a species that stretches, there's two distinct DNA strains of the species. One is Gulf and one is East Coast. So from Georgia all the way up the rest of the coast here is under the auspices of the South Atlantic Council. They've been looking at this. They've seen the catch data. We are, without doubt, looking at an early season closure. I'm blunt. It is what it is. I'll tell you why. Bingo. That red line? It's where it should be. That's where the recreational and the commercial landings of cobia should be. And you see last year, way off the charts. Coast-wide, we caught an awful lot of cobia. We back up. When I say we, recreational anglers caught a lot of cobia, because 92% of all the cobia landed here in Virginia were by recreational anglers, not commercial anglers, commercial fishermen. And most of those commercial fishermen would be hook and line license holders. Wanted you guys to see this number and to see this slide. This is what we're looking at. This is what we're facing. You can see what we caught in the past, and you can see what happened last year. That's huge. That's huge. I mean, these fish migrate up the coast here, and they meander their way up north to come on up here to spawn in the bay. They do some spawning along the way here, but it's mostly in the bay. We hammered them. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We did. And as a result, there's going to be an early season closure. And that is to make sure that the damage that was done isn't duplicated again this year. And thankfully, the stock is not overfished, or we've been looking at a coastwide closure immediately. There have been no discussion. It would have been, that's it, done. But at least we got some wiggle room here for some degree of a fishery for this year. And it's an opportunity, I think, to get this fishery in a better managed position here so we don't ever get in this position again. Right now, the cobia regulations for us is 1 fish per day, 37 inches. Federal waters is a little bit different, but the vast majority of the cobia that are landed it's an inshore fishery. This isn't a deep water fishery here. So the bad news is the hammer is this. The National Marine Fishery Service just the other day, it might have been yesterday or the day before, I'll tell you my days are blurring together in a lot of ways. Thursday? Thursday. Great. I might have missed a day in my head. June 20th is the closure date for the recreational fishery in federal waters. That applies to all the states as well. There really is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And if you guys want to ask me, I'll tell you. Does VMRC have the authority to tell them all to go pound sand and to go away? Well, kind of, yeah, but you know what? It's just a matter of time before they catch us. It's just a matter of time before the feds order a closure. And what do you think happens when they order a closure? You think that they're going to go gentle? They're not going to go gentle. If we raise a pirate flag and basically say, you know, it's state orders here, you can't tell us what to do. They can, under federal law, tell us what to do. And if we don't do it, they have the authority to close the fishery. And then whatever we need from them or from other species is going to be much harder to get. So, June 20th, there's going to be a bit of wiggle room for that, though. We've been working closely with them for the last few weeks, both the feds and the South Atlantic Council. There's room to mitigate this to a degree. How much of a degree is hard to tell. So what we're going to do is we're going to discuss it at the next VMRC Commission meeting at the end of the month. We meet on the 4th Tuesday. Incidentally, it's the 4th Tuesday of every month, and the meetings start at 9:30 in the morning. And they have been known to end at 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. So if anybody wants to volunteer for VMRC to get a board appointment, be careful what you ask for, because we're trying to tie your day up, and it's going to be complicated and boring as heck, and it's going to drain you because it's really tough. Right. Good. So we'll discuss this at the commission. We're going to continue to work on some ways to minimize this impact a bit. We could set an emergency regulation, but I don't think we're there yet because we need to better explore some of the options that will be available to us. So my expectation is the commission will make a decision on the 4th Tuesday of April. And in the meantime, what we're looking at is this. Here's some possibilities. While June 20th is the closure date set by the feds, they'll be able to reevaluate that as other states restrict their catches. And that will allow a longer opening season. It'll shrink the closure is another way of looking at it. So we don't have a vessel limit now. So if we go to a 6-fish limit, what's the impact of that per vessel? Or 5, or 3, or 2, or 1 fish per vessel. We extend the size possession limit here. If we go, up to 37 or 40 or 44 inches, will that be enough of a savings to give us a meaningful extended season? It'll still close early. It's going to close early. We don't know. The feds are evaluating all those different scenarios, and they're doing it at the order of the Atlantic State, well, not at the order of the South Atlantic Council, but they're working hand in glove on that. We're working with them hand in glove, making sure that the data that they're using is accurate and that we agree with their evaluations of what the benefits are to extend the fishery depending on what management measures we take here. The other thing is a bit more complicated and it's a bit more, what's the right word? Up in the air. they're willing at this point here to talk about rolling closures. As these fish migrate up the coast here, you know, Georgia takes a whack at them, South Carolina takes a whack at them, North Carolina takes a whack at them. Then they come and settle in the bay for a while, and we really get a whack at them. We get a much longer season than most of the other states because these species are passing through. They only have a window of opportunity to catch the fish. Our window is a bay window because they're here. They're here to spawn, and they're here for a longer period. So is it possible to create a rolling closure where, you know, Georgia gets knocked a month off of its historic season, and, you know, we get 4 weeks and South Carolina gets 5 weeks, something like that? There might be a way to do that. That's complicated. I don't know if they'd be willing to do it, but it's certainly something that's on the table for discussion. You look like you have a question.
Yeah, if you're trying to manage the fishery and improve it, wouldn't you want to leave the fishery closed while they're coming into spawn and open it as they're leaving?
Well, yes, as a general principle, that's absolutely right. And that's why we manage crabs the way we do, and that's why we manage oysters the way we do, so that there is no harvest as the oysters are spawning. And crabs, there's a decreased catch limit here when they're about to spawn. That's a basic principle of fisheries management, which is the more spawning females you leave in the water here before they spawn, the more you have than the next generation. This stock, the cobia stock, has not been deemed to be in a bad shape. It's not been overfished. If it had been, or overfishing was occurring, we'd be looking at an entirely different scenario. Up until now, the catch coastwide has been relatively low, not impacting the species' abilities to reproduce effectively. And if we continued with last year's fishing effort and fishing success, we would definitely reach that point. So as a general rule, do we want to not whack them before they've spawned? Yes, but this hasn't been a species where that's been much of a concern. Now it's going to be much more of a concern. So there's one practical thing I think you can all take home from this, for cobia at least. If you're going to have a cobia tournament, how about August? Not June or July, because that's when they're spawning more. August, the bulk of the spawn has been done. So you at least leave more in the water to spawn before you get a chance to catch them. So it's not a mandate. I'm just saying if you want to be able to help a bit, that's a little something you can do. Mike.
So if we are able to get an extended season beyond June 20th, and we come to some sort of agreement on a much lower boat limit, those additional days, do you see us having separate regulations for federal waters versus state waters, or do you think the extended days would apply to both?
No, I think it would apply to state waters. The vast majority of this fishery is inshore. If it was really an issue out there in federal waters here with an excessive amount of cobia being caught in federal waters, they take a harder stance at that. They're looking at this from an aggregate level, but they're also trying to do this at as fair a level as possible for each state. And I got to tell you, we've had allies. We've had allies speaking on our behalf with us at both the South Atlantic Council and at the National Marine Fisheries Service. They are not taking an attitude that, Virginia, you did this, you are going to pay the piper, and we don't care. Go away. They're not taking that attitude. They're trying to find a path forward that's good for the species, that allows at least some degree of a fishing season for us and for the other coastal states in the Southeast. And they're trying to find a way that we all in the Southeast end up with catch restrictions that ensure we don't get into this situation again. So does that answer your question, Mike?
No, it does. And there are some fishermen that still fish federal waters.
Yep.
Along the ocean front, right outside, Cape Henry, out to the light tower. And the cobia, there are, all summer long, there are still cobia out in federal waters. Not to the extent it's in the bay, but, so I guess it would be similar to a striped bass regulation. There's a demarcation line.
Yep.
You can keep a cobia in these waters, but not the federal waters. And so.
Yep. We are used to enforcing those type of boundaries. It's not optimal, but, it could end up that way. as a general principle, fisheries managers, both at the South Atlantic, Mid-Atlantic, and the New England Council, the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, and with us in Maryland, Virginia and Maryland, we try to keep the catch limits close, if not the same, between those jurisdictional boundaries. It makes it easier for law enforcement. You don't have to worry, the cops at that point don't have to worry so much about where a fish came from.
Right. So my other question is the data that you're working with the National Marine Fisheries Service on the lower vessel limits, when do you think you'll have that data back? Because what we would like to do in VISA too is, if we have the data, get our anglers together and have time. And I get there's not a lot of time here. This is kind of a time crunch here. We'd like to have time for the anglers to digest. Okay, one fish per boat will give us a lot more days, but without knowing what that is, we don't have anything to pull our anglers with yet.
And I think and you've worked with us, and you've been familiar with the work that we've been doing on this issue over the last few weeks. We've been trying to keep everybody informed. There's lots of gaps in the data with that we've seen. We don't know what they're going to come up with their data analysis, but you know what? We're perfectly happy to share that, and we will go out of our way to proactively disseminate that to the degree we can, because it's important for anglers to know what the options are, and for anglers to have a say in what they think the best option would be. You know what? I think that none of us should expect through all this to be able to walk away with an extra 3 or 4 weeks or month in the season. I'm not that hopeful. I'm hoping an extra couple of weeks based on the data and what restrictions we have. Anglers may well say, geez, a 2 cobia per vessel limit here only gets us a week. Is it really worth limiting us for that for a week? I don't know. Maybe so. Maybe some say yes. Maybe some say no. So we want to have input. We always want to have input. The more input, the better. On the other hand, at the end of the day here, the commission's the ones that are making the tough decisions. So the more input, the better, but don't think that just because you've had good input and you all thought about it very well, the commission is necessarily going to agree with you. Yeah. So we have some more.
I hope I can get this one out coherently.
Well, hold on 1 second here, off the web here. Will the cobia season open back up next year? Yeah, sure it will. Sure it will, but it's going to be hard to see exactly how long it's going to be yet. We got a lot of different moving parts. But Virginia, I'm committed to having as long an open cobia season as we can. That said, I don't want to do this in a way here that we are detrimentally impacting the stock's ability to repopulate, to spawn successfully and in good numbers. But that's what the South Atlantic Council and the National Marine Fisheries Service are endeavoring to make sure happens along the way here. So I hope that answered the question. I expect the season this year, a limited season. I expect the season next year. How long of a season? I guess we're going to have to see how all that's going to be. There's big changes coming with cobia. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I got to tell you, the data that I just flashed up here, what our landings were and the coastal landings, 240% more than had been landed the year before, of which 55.6% of every cobia caught in the Southeast came from Virginia. There are other southern states, and I know their directors, they're not especially happy with Virginia. But they're working with us because I have good relationships with them. Bob.
Mr. Bull, yes, sir. Looking forward to 2017. John Bello, our chairman, is very, very sincere. We're very, very sincere about wanting to work with VMRC on all fishery management issues. Is there anything, and it seems to me that a big missing link that we have in the Bay is stock assessment. I don't think there's been a stock assessment in the Bay for cobia. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So if there's anything we can do to help get the funding for that kind of thing, we'll be glad to do it. Write letters, talk to people, whatever we need to do. Because I think if we need to look at what is the stock assessment. Is there a problem? Is it scientifically? What is the magnitude of the problem? And then for myself, it would be a lot easier to swallow this bullet if I really understood and believed that there was a problem. Thank you.
Okay, I understand. Let me clarify this and make sure that I drum this point in, because I don't think I did adequately a bit before when you brought up stock assessments. It's easier to do a stock assessment on a species that doesn't migrate. We can do a pretty good stock assessment, and we do, with Maryland every year on crabs, because crabs live in the bay, they migrate around the bay. They don't migrate out into the ocean and go up and down the eastern seaboard. Neither do oysters. We have a very good oyster stock assessment because oysters ain't running away as we're trying to count them. That's not the case for migratory species like cobia. How do you do a stock assessment that's centered just on the bay when these fish come up here and they stay a little bit and then they go? Man, how do you do that? I mean, I'm not a scientist, but I don't know how it's done. And the scientists that I've talked to, the stock assessors that I've talked to, this issue comes up with cobia, it comes up with menhaden, it comes up with striped bass all the time. To a degree, it comes up with red drum, some of the other species. The only way they tell me that they can do a stock assessment is from a macro level, from a coast-wide perspective, that measures the quantity of fish, the reproductive capabilities, their age structures. Does that mean, striped bass is a good example. There you go. We have good data here on how big striped bass can be, how big they are out there in the ocean, and to a degree, how big they are in the bay. We got a male, female, gender distribution. But the fact of the matter is that these fish migrate. And they migrate up and down the coast. And those of you that fish for striped bass will know full well that we had a whole bunch of schoolies the last couple of years out there on the coast that didn't come into the bay. They just didn't. Boy, we would have liked to have them, you betcha, but they didn't. And that's countered previous years. So how do we do a stock assessment on what the striped bass population is in the bay for a migratory species that may or may not follow its normal migratory patterns? So I throw that out there as examples how it's a difficult thing to do a stock assessment on a migratory species on where it happens to be in part of its life cycle. Does that help explain that at all, Bob? Okay. Yes, sir. Well, hold on a second. Could somebody please pass him a microphone?
Yes, sir. I understand that this is a recreational problem as far as the amount of fish that have been taken. However, back in 2001, when we did go for the recreational side from 2 to 1 fish, I think there was an unwritten agreement between fisheries management at the time and the public that they would keep an eye on the commercial catch, and if it moved, in a significant direction, towards a greater percentage of the catch. In other words, it was roughly 92 then. You're saying roughly 92% now.
Exactly 92%.
I'm concerned that if we drop this recreational catch, we still have it open for the commercial side, that we may be moving, that may be an opportunity for the commercial side to increase their take on this. I think a lot of people traditionally view cobia as it's not a game fish legally or anything like that, but some states have so designated it. And I would hate to see that ratio change where people are taking advantage of this circumstance.
Yeah, I hear you. It's the same thing with speckled trout as well. And these are predominantly recreational fisheries. There's some commercial landings on it. It's a pretty small part about the whole thing. Do we keep an eye on them both? Yeah, we do. Would the hammer fall equally on the commercial guys, and I'm guessing this is your follow-up question, as it will on the recreational anglers with this early season closure? I don't have an answer to that. I think maybe to a degree, the catch restrictions, they would impact the commercial hook and line industry, and I'm pretty sure that we're going to end up with a little bit, they'll be able to harvest a bit less. I'll tell you, fairness is a watchword for me. I mean, I'm an open government guy, but part and parcel of all that is being fair. And being fair under the state law that we manage fisheries is that we have to treat all user groups fairly. That's codified in the code. That's why we don't have game fish status for any species in the Chesapeake Bay and Virginia's waters. So if you ever wanted that changed, you got to go to the General Assembly, and I'll see you there.
John, in order to keep fairness on the table, all commercial catch is reported.
Yes.
So you know what the numbers are every year
Yes.
for the commercial catch of cobia.
Yes.
And if you're going to reduce the recreational catch, you probably should consider putting a cap on the commercial catch, which will work. They do it in other species. You know that the flounder and the seabass and all those, they're when they see the numbers are going up for that year, they warn the commercial anglers, hey, we're getting ready to cut this off. And after a certain date, you can't fish for them anymore. So you guys can put a cap on the commercial guys also, if you see that it is expanded beyond what it should.
I hear what you're saying, Bob. Fairness to me means 50-50 as a general rule, and we have fisheries out there that are not 50-50. They're 50-50 for stripers, they're 50-50 for most of these species, but there's a couple of these fisheries, cobia and speckled trout in particular, where they're predominantly recreational fisheries. I hear what you're saying, and I'm going to want to do the right thing. Commission makes the fair thing. The commission makes the final decision on that. So if the recreational fishery gets whacked a significant amount, does the commercial fishery, which harvests 8% of the entire cobia, should they get whacked to an equal degree? It's a commission decision. I hear you, but I could very much hear some commercial cobia fishermen with hook and line licenses that say, we ain't catching 50% of the catch. Why should we get an equal cut?
Yeah, but they should take the same percentage. If you want to be equal, and the VMRC should recognize that. And it's going you want to keep the recreational people on your court. You want them on your side. You want to alienate them. The VMRC does not want to alienate them. And it seems to me that you should help us by saying, all right, we're going to put a cap on the commercial catch as well. You're putting a cap on the recreational catch, in effect.
Okay, thank you, Bob. All right, well, before we move on to that, there's a couple other cobia questions, and you all written them down here, so let me run through a couple of them pretty quickly, and then we'll jump back into other questions here. I think we just discussed this. Will VMRC close commercial fishing and the sale of cobia if they close the season for recreational? That's a question that's yet to be answered, and there's the fairness issue, and that'll be something the commission will decide as this all becomes clearer in time and not an awful lot of time. Another question concerning the looming possibility of closing the cobia season in Virginia waters this season. Where is the science? Has the stock assessment been conducted? There is the stock assessment, as we discussed. It's a coastal stock assessment. It's a migratory species, and this is one of the reasons why we are where we are. We know how many fish caught historically and where, and we know what the stock's composition is. If the cobia season is closed or seriously limited for 2016, will charter captains be compensated for lost income? No. 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 VMRC and the state does not compensate. We can't compensate. You've seen our budget reduction. I just had it up there. Well, we wouldn't have the money to do it anyhow. If somebody in the audience wants to follow up on that question and wants to be a bit more specific, I'd like the opportunity to understand the question better.
No, if you're a charter captain and you need to learn to fish for other fish, is my opinion on that. There are other fish out there, not just cobia.
John, I want to be respectful of your time. We're coming to a close, if you will. If maybe we could take the last couple of questions and then move on.
Well, I think I've answered most of the questions that were written. And does anybody else in the audience have additional questions? Any questions over the web? Yes, sir.
I got one on the ACM, the accountability measure.
Yeah.
From what it sounded like, it's that the federal government was bound bound to close it once we went over the ACL, according to Amendment 19. But when they adopted that, they chose to, if we go over the ACL, that we'll close the season the next season. But the other option, the way I understand it, is that you can monitor through the season, and Florida monitors the catch, and then cuts it off when they get close. Is that correct? And is that the state's responsibility to monitor it? Obviously, it probably is, but does the federal government help Florida funding-wise to get that data?
Wow. Let me guess you're a lawyer.
Yes.
You're a lawyer. Okay. All right. That wasn't a wild guess on my part. Yeah, I asked some serious legal questions in there, and I could take a dodge and say, I'm not a lawyer, consult a lawyer. That doesn't help. Let me tell you some basic principles. If this species was managed on a state-by-state quota system, such as is the case with summer flounder, with striped bass, with a number of other fisheries, VMRC indeed would monitor the quota and the harvest and close the fishery, the commercial fishery, in the event they come close to the quota. And we, you know, there's a wiggle room in there, usually about 8 to 10%. Because we figure we close the, we do this all the time with commercial flounder fishing. You know, we know that there's a couple of boats out there and that they're probably filled, and once they come in, that'll be it for the state's quota. So we set the closure date for 48 hours from that time. So we're pretty good about that. Can we do that with recreational fishing as well? No, there's no way we can do that. On the other hand, some states that keep a closer eye on these things, I don't think they get federal help on keeping track of the quotas, their state quotas. So, didn't directly answer all your question, but I'm not an attorney, and I don't even play one on television. Any other questions? Sir, please.
One more.
No, I don't have a question. I just say, my Visa membership just paid for itself today. I thank you very much for the information, and I've learned so much today from your presentation. I just want to say thank you.
I think we owe him a round of applause.
Let me say a couple things in wrap up here. I believe in what we do and why we do it. This is my second career. I'm passionate about this. You're all passionate about your fisheries as well. I'm not your enemy. VMRC is not your enemy. The system is set up so that good, sound management decisions are made, and we can all haggle over some of the nuances of those. We are in better shape with our fisheries today than we were 20 years ago. 20 years ago, you know, we had the striped bass fishery closed throughout the bay. Nobody wants to see those days again. While each and every fishery is important to individuals and some degree or another, depending, we take them equally seriously. We do what we can with the resources that we have. I'm proud of the work that we do. I'm proud of the effort this staff takes. The staff at VMRC is very experienced. I'm blessed. I got people in upper management positions here that 25, 30, 35, 38, 42 years of experience at VMRC. That's a great benefit. They know what they're doing. All I need to do is make sure they're going in the right direction and to get some guidance on basic policies and some things that, you know, I think were necessary. But that's a great benefit, but here's a great curse. And the curse in that is every single one of them could put their 2-week notice in tomorrow afternoon, and I'm stuck with a major problem. So my advice is get involved, give us your perspectives. Know that our staff has the same desire as you all. We want healthy, thriving fisheries. We want catch restrictions that ensure that that happens. You come in with us with give me more, give me more, give me more just because we want more, you're not going to get an open ear. But if you come in with a good idea and a good plan and a reasonable expectation that if we can, within the limits of providing a sustainable fishery, we're all ears. And if we make it happen, we're happy to do that. So I'm happy to be here today, and I commend you all for the work that you're doing and that you're mobilizing together. I think, as I met with John and Mike back in October, November or so, I mean, I welcome you all with open arms. The more you're involved and the more you give informed perspective and informed, knowledgeable comments and suggestions, that's great. Nothing but good things happen from that. But as you also already are starting to learn, what's good for the southern end of the bay ain't necessarily the same with the northern end of the bay and the eastern shore and the western shore. And welcome to my world.
Thank you very much. I think you personify one of the quotes that you had earlier, open government at its finest. I don't think we could have asked for anything more out of this presentation today. So, John, thank you very much. And we do want to continue the dialogue. You want to take a break real quick, or you want to launch? How about a 5-minute break? I'm glad we asked you to come and talk to us. Thank you very much again, John. All right, last part of this meeting that we're going to have today, we're going to call it the town hall, where we're going to talk about issues and priorities for this organization going forward into the next year. And for that, I'm going to turn this back to Mike Avery. So, Mike.
All right. This is the part where we talk less and we listen more. And so I will kind of refresh your memory if you just want to, from a starting point, our initial fisheries actions priorities. And we even, believe it or not, we actually tried to rank order them too. I'm not even going to try to brief you guys on what we think we should do about each one of these, because I want to just put that up there just for you guys to have something to think about. We initially developed this. We sat down and went through every fish on the VMRC website that has a regulation for it. And we said, do we have any issues with XYZ? And we just went through them all, and we came up with this list. And we've kind of refined it over time. But this is a part where what I want to do is get your input. We want the anglers' input on where you think VISA ought to go in 2016 and beyond. What are the activities and the fisheries actions plans that you think that we should get involved in? And again, because we're still transmitting live, you know, if we could pass the microphone around, because even though we can hear, the people that are listening in can't hear anything. So we'll start kind of just passing stuff around.
All right, you want to comment? Bob Allen. And before I go to the restroom, I'm going to give you a comment. And the first thing we need to have is to increase our membership. Because if you don't have membership, you can't have committees. And one reason we haven't had active committees, we don't have any membership. Now, we got members now, and we can populate our committees. But this is just, we're in our infancy, and we need to get all the clubs involved, and anybody that has a club back home or can influence other club members, we want to get all the clubs affiliated. We want to get as strong as other statewide organizations have in the past. So our priority should be membership, Mike. That's my personal opinion. That's my personal opinion. And I'm only one of about 13 people on the board.
Yes, thanks, Bob.
Here we go, Mike.
I have a couple observations. For me to better outreach and poll my members of my club, I need a little adequate time to do that. I have to take the information back to my board, let the board know what was going on before I can let the membership know. So you got to give me a little time. I'd appreciate that. The next thing is, I would love to see an advertisement in our club newsletter from VSSA. So in order for me to put an article in the newsletter, I can reference that, and on that advertisement would be your VSSA message board. The other thing, the government affairs thing, the guy mentioned a lot of totals, a lot of figures on how much money is being spent in the state of Virginia. And when I was at the subcommittee meeting up at the General Assembly, I don't remember that information being put out. That would have been very good to hear.
Could you say that again, that last one?
He wants the Southwick numbers that I threw out earlier on the impact of recreational fishing in the state of Virginia shared with the General Assembly. And by the way, that study was done by Southwick. It was done in October of 2015, so the data is relatively recent.
Okay.
Another question coming your way.
Now what we're going to try to do here, guys, is we're not going to try to solve the issues here. If there's a discussion about it from you guys, that's fine. But I want to just make sure that we get them all captured on at least so we can take them back with us. And if we have time, we'll discuss as many as we can. But I want to first get them all kind of captured because we can bog down and we can talk on an hour on each one of these issues and get bogged down. So that's kind of, just so you know, that's our intent. Not to try to solve the issues here, but we want to capture what your concerns are and take them all back with us. And then that's really the board's job is to work on the issues and try to solve them. Go ahead.
I'm just reinforcing the last point there that because I talk to my local reps and senators and whatnot on a routine basis, having that financial knowledge of what recreational fishery, what the benefit is to the state is very helpful, even in talking with neighbors and others.
Okay, come on, guys. This is, I know everybody wants to, oh, you have a card up here? Of the 504 members, how many of our club members and how many are individual members? I don't know if Brent has our actual breakdown of the numbers. Yeah, less than half. We have about 130 individual members, and the rest are from the affiliate clubs. But I don't. That's probably pretty close. Communications and outreach. Is the intent to only do it with members, broadcast publicly, something like posted on Titlefish? I mean, yes, any and all. So when we have something, when we're trying to reach the angling public on things we're doing in VISA, we kind of broadcast as many places as we can. And we're looking to do that better and more places to get the word out. But we also still communicate with our members, and we're using a mail service program. You've probably seen it called MailChimp. And you know, any mail program has limitations, and sometimes spam filters intercept them. So if any of our members are not getting communications from Visa, you know, let us know. We got to figure out how to get that out of your spam filter. But yes, when we have member business, like the ballot form and things like that, that only went out to members. You know, the ballot form didn't go out to anyone else other than members. But we still want to reach a broader audience, and that's all the angling public. That's the only way we're going to grow and get new members to share what we're doing in our success stories. Seminars, plans for interviews with VMRC, VIMS, and people. What we have planned now that you'll see on the website, that's just a draft, and we're open to any and all suggestions. Technically, this is really our March meeting, because this one we broadcast, and so John Bull's presentation and Q&A was our March meeting. So we're going to, April was planned to be drum, because in May the drum will start showing up, or really even late April. And so we tried to time the seminars based on when the fish roll in or when the fishing is good. But we're open to any and all ideas. If anyone wants to see us, and now I will also tell you that the hardest part is getting someone to agree to speak. And the clubs will tell you the same thing. Because there's lots of good anglers out there who do well on a certain species, but few of them want to get up and talk publicly. And it's a tough thing to get an angler or charter captain or someone to get up and talk about a certain species. But you're saying you want to see more.
Well, just like we had John talk.
John Bull have.
I mean, if we had a short hour-long seminar, monthly seminar on the issue of in the news.
Yeah, in fact, we've talked about getting VIMS, a speaker from VIMS, getting someone from the Elizabeth River project, and others. And so those are on there too. And so yeah, the list you see is just draft, and it could change depending on what you guys want to see.
I want to try getting a meeting at a Brock Center too.
You mean have a visa meeting at the Brock Center? They have an excellent facility. I agree with that. I was very impressed. That was the first time I went there when they held their meeting, and that's a good point.
We even talked about potentially doing this meeting there, but decided that one meeting room might not be big enough. I mean, we didn't know how many people we were going to actually get, so.
But the other problem we have with physical meetings too is, and it's, we're trying to be a statewide association too, and we're trying, anytime you pick a physical location, you're making someone get in his car and drive pretty far. So we're trying to do more virtual things. Go ahead.
Why don't you consider, if you want more members, having the members that are already in, bring one other member in and give them a break on the fee next year or something like that.
Oh, so if you,
members recruit members.
If you bring a free member in, you get 50% off next year or something like that. That's a good suggestion. I like that.
I was reminded after I talked that I needed to elaborate a little bit on the 501c3 C4 designation and their limitation on political activity. If I wasn't clear about it, it really is a very narrow restriction. It's not something that to be concerned about with most of our activity as far as writing regulators or legislators. Individually, there's no concern. If you want to do it individually, you can do it. Really, the limitation on the organization is we cannot donate to a campaign. That is the big limitation. So I just wanted to clarify that. And then I think initial priority-wise, these committees, and I hope people aren't deterred by the fact that we've met every week the last year, but we've been trying to play the role of committee and board, which has been difficult. So I would hope that we can move to once every 3 weeks, and the committees play an active role and keep us up to speed and on what's going on. So, and I don't think those committees, like the Government Affairs Committee, for example, I think it's a matter of we just need a couple people to monitor a couple email streams from National Fisheries Commission and say, hey, board, y'all need to look into this. We probably need to take a position. And I think a few people can go a long way with that and really take some pressure off the board.
Mike, I know you're talking about shortening having fewer meetings. I think for about the next 2 months, we better keep them every Thursday, because with the cobia issue ongoing, I think everyone, it is fast, it's happening fast, and I think we ought to go ahead and have our telephone meetings every week. Even if some of us can't make it, I think we should have. I just think there's so much going on right now. Maybe by May or June, things will settle down and you can have them whenever you want them. But I think right now you ought to keep them going.
Now, what Bob is talking about is our internal board meetings. Yeah. And since we started, we've been having one every single Thursday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Also, what we want to do, though, is have more external meetings where we invite you guys in. We haven't done as many of those as I wanted to, but we can discuss that internally in the board. It's how often we want to meet. But what I want to do also is open up more meetings where we tell our members what we're up to, and then get their input more often via these remote telephone calls. So, but yeah, we'll talk
Down
about
front,
that.
and then we have one back here, Mike.
We have one up here too.
Well,
Go ahead.
referring to the board meetings, I think it's an excellent idea now that we got a hot issue, that you guys meet once a week. And if nothing else, focus on that. But I got to tell you, if you're going to continue on to do it, and I give you guys a big hand of applause for doing what you're doing, but you can only last so long. And the sooner you can get back to once a month on your board meetings, I think it'll be a whole lot better for you.
Yeah, I mean, we're all volunteers. None of us are getting paid a nickel. And our attitude so far is if someone misses a meeting, nobody gets chewed out. Nobody says, where the heck were you? I haven't seen you in 3 weeks, we get people have, jobs and family and they occasionally like to fish. And so, I get that. And we've already had some internal, I'll say dissension about let's go to less frequently, meetings. And you're right. It does every Thursday as you're getting off work. I know Doug O here, he's often just getting off work after putting in a 12-hour day, and he's dialing in on his commute home. And so it's tough, I know. Question up here?
Mike, I saw you, I guess it was about a month ago at the boat show in Virginia Beach.
That was last week.
Didn't I see you there?
Yeah, I saw you
Okay.
it was last week. Yeah.
And then I saw a figure flashed on the screen, and it was just for a split second, vendor's fee or something like that. And I'm just curious, how effective was it? You looked pretty busy when I went by you, but I'm curious, how effective was that venture to sell and promote the organization?
Well, first of all, Great Bridge hosted us and gave us a booth for free, being a nonprofit, and so we didn't actually pay. So I was glad to see Great Bridge. So we didn't pay for our booth. We were there, and they allowed us to have that booth through a generous donation back to us. We were busy the whole time. We talked to a lot of anglers, and so how effective it was, I don't know. But we got to get our word out, and we got to just do it one angler at a time. And we didn't get a lot of members sign up, just a handful. But that's part of. We got to get our face and our name out there, and let people see us. And that was just one of the venues, hopefully, of many of us trying to just promote awareness of what we're trying to do. A lot of anglers out there who don't even know anything about us. They don't go to Facebook. They don't go to Title Fish. They don't. We're trying to get. We did have one article published in the Richmond Times-Dispatch. We're trying to get more of those published to get the word out. But we're getting there.
You didn't have time to acknowledge. You didn't even. I mean, you saw me, but you didn't have time to talk to me because you had so many people.
Yeah, we only had 3 working the booth, and there were times where we were all 3 engaged. So it was a good event, and Great Bridge did an excellent job. It was a big event and a huge turnout.
Actually, that's a good thing. It's good that they were busy. All right, do we have some other issues that we want to talk about or we want to focus on in terms of priorities?
I just wanted to say one thing. I had a couple of questions about the website, the message board, and membership. I think we're going to try a little harder and the video also, the password for the video for members. I think I'm going to work up something so it'll be a little more evident on the website and the message board. When you become a member, you will get a password. You will be able to get into all the forums. The reason for the password on the forums is spam. You will not see spam on this forum. You will not see anything other than Visa Business. That's the reason for that. And when you sign up, we're going to come up with a good way to make sure a member gets something, an email, a package, a letter, something that says, you are a member, thank you for your payment. Here is how to get in. Here's how to do what you need to do.
Yeah, we're still working on the whole membership online thing, because right now you got to sign out a little web form, you got to do the PayPal thing, and then when Brent gets around to it, he's a firefighter by day, and so when he got time, he sends you a welcome letter out via email, and so we're trying to automate that whole thing. That when you become a member, it's like checking out from a shopping cart and you're buying something, you get an immediate thing back. Another question.
Yeah, I know you mentioned your species priority list. There's a working living document there. I'd be interested, to perhaps have you poll your members or your board people and see if they think spadefish is of any concern out there. I didn't see it on there at all. I've been involved with the fishery for quite some time, and I've been really disappointed that it's going downhill.
Well, that's one of the things we were trying to do today, is see if there were other fisheries that we should be looking at that we haven't looked at. So thank you very much, Larry.
No, I agree, because, even just when I first started fishing here about 15 years ago, citation spadefish every trip. You would just wail on them. And
you wouldn't think so, because it's fairly well regulated as far as full fish. But there's other dynamics out there. For example, there's a small group of people that like to jump in a big boat with spear guns and move along the pilings.
What
Well,
what would you like to see happen with spadefish?
No, again, first of all, you have to see if there's an interest in your membership as far as, are there measures that can be taken? Perhaps it's a VMRC or it's a RFAB project that you want to push. In other words, go to VIMS and see if there's someone interested in looking at the dynamics there. Is anything changed?
Okay. Okay. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Well, I got a couple of points. One, regarding involving the membership and what the board's doing, and I don't have any idea of the cost, but I understand when you have the board meetings, you do them by teleconference calls, and I don't know if it would be too much expense to open that up to any of the members that may want to call in, not comment, but simply listen to what you're doing, and if they have questions, for the next one, they can submit them or something, and you can take it up. But that way, at least you'd get more involvement. And the second one, which is unrelated, would be we have to start thinking about what this organization is going to do when it gets to the point that it's so big as far as members are concerned. You're going to have to start thinking about a paid person to basically handle the day-to-day duties of the organization. And I don't know how you do that, but because you obviously have to walk before you can run, money-wise, but you need to be thinking about that, because there's nothing more important than when you sign up for a membership, almost within the next 2 or 3 days later, if you have a card comes out, and a welcoming letter, and that type of thing. And I know somebody is doing this now in the group, and it's great that they are, but eventually you're going to get to the point that you have to be thinking about somebody on that type of basis. And if you could find somebody that would be willing to grow with you as the group grew and start off more of a volunteer, and then with the promise as you move along, you could work it into a salary. You ought to be talking about it.
Do you know such a person? Because we are totally cognizant of that fact. If you think back to the budget figure we have a grand total of roughly $3,000 in the budget. That would not go very far in terms of paying a salary. We are all volunteers at this point. Until we have more money, paid administrative help just isn't possible. If you know somebody that's willing to do it gratis, we would love to talk to you.
And part of our growth plan is when we do get not just larger memberships, but when we start having our fundraising, and that's kind of one of the primary purposes of raising funds, so that eventually we can have part-time secretary that helps us with just the administrivia, which is a lot of stuff. I mean, you would, and you're right, there's just a lot of behind-the-scenes administrivia work to do, and we're going to have to do that eventually, but we got to have the funds to
I
do
think
it.
if you could find the person, well, it's going to be hard to find somebody maybe to volunteer to do it, but if you could find somebody that would do it with some sort of a promise as the association grew money-wise, you would be able to pay something, you may be able to find that person.
Yeah, excellent point.
Excellent point. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, sir.
This is my first meeting, so I don't know what's been going on over the last year, and I'm all ears trying to learn what y'all are doing. I guess a question would be, has the interim board considered some sort of a bold initiative that everyone who joins VSSA could get around so they could see a common vision of what this organization could do for them? And as an example of that, I did attend the legislative meeting up in Richmond about menhaden, and to me there was a whole lot of interest in getting Omega to catch their menhaden outside of the bay. Everybody here is quiet right now, and I think we can all get interested in something like that so that we could see how we could take this organization in a definitive way to contest something that we all believe is hurting us. So has this been discussed by VSSA? Have y'all talked about this?
May I?
Go ahead.
There are some of us that have been fighting this menhaden fight since 2001. And pardon me, are we still broadcasting on the network?
Yeah, that's okay. So
I'm tired of pissing in the wind. And that's exactly what it is. The General Assembly does not think that there is a problem. There is a reason the General Assembly manages one fish in the state of Virginia. All right? It is political. There is not a single recreational organization in the state of Virginia that has the power to change that. Some of us in this room have been trying to get bills out of committee going back as far as 2005. We have yet to get a bill out of the committee, and the reason for that is Omega's got political power. Who paid for the governor's $40,000 inaugural ball? They can donate. We can't donate. You can't donate enough money to get them to change their vote. You can't even get them to vote in the committee. There were two people in the House that supported the regulation. Which two were they? You don't know because it's not on record. It was passed by indefinitely, and that's been the story over and over and over. That is all the more reason this organization needs to grow, and people need to get involved. People need to get in touch with their representatives in the General Assembly, and they don't do it. Other organizations have put out draft letters in the past. Change the wording, make it look like it's yours, but here's a draft of what you need to say. It doesn't happen. They don't do it. There's just too damn much apathy.
My point is, did VSSA ever discuss that they were going to take on a bold initiative so that everyone could get around? This obviously is a bold initiative.
We have talked through this. In fact, menhaden came up number one on the list here. That's not accurate. When we had the vote, it was actually number two. But yes, we have talked about it. We're going to continue to talk about it. Rockfish is another one that's very political. We're going to continue to talk about it. We just did a poll. If you look back at Tidal Fish and in the other places it was posted on social media, and the results came back so mixed. We haven't gone forth with what the official VSSA position is, because when we do represent the results of that poll, we'll represent the results of the poll. We don't have an official opinion at this point. We are going to be actively involved in this cobia thing. We have been involved in it already. And more on the fisheries that we had listed on the other sheet, which is what we were hoping to get from this group today, is what you all see our priorities should be. So I thank you for your input. We're going to continue to fight that battle. We will continue to be involved in it, and we will continue to debate it.
I really, I was using menhaden as an example. I was only suggesting that maybe if this organization had a priority list of, say, 3 to 5 things that we could go to our clubs and talk about and say, this is what they're going to do, or this is what they want to do. And if I can do that, then people in my club could say, well, what can I do to help out? And I can keep selling that story. If I have 20 items, 20 fish or whatever, I can't sell much because it's too generic.
So what you're really saying is us level the list of things that we're looking at down to 2 or 3 things. And by the way, I agree with you. People remember things in threes, like read, write, and blue, reading, write, and arithmetic. Right. So, Mike, I think what he's saying is we ought to have something up there is what are our top 3? And I do thank you for the input.
And, we've talked about that too, Mike. We've actually said, hey, let's just pick a handful of priorities and focus our energies on those because we're small now, and so we have a dozen priorities. We're only able to spend a little bit of time on each of them, and so that's an excellent point. Is would we be better served to focus on top 3 or top 5, for example, rather than a dozen? That's a good point, and I welcome other thoughts on that.
You'd almost need a strategic intent committee if you do that, because it's going to be a time and effort and payback. One thing to have a stated priority. It's another thing is it realistically achievable in a time period? You don't want something that's going to be a forever project. In order for the organization to show progress, that 2 or 3 priorities need to be something that has some achievable opportunity to it.
Yes, and that's a good point, and I appreciate that. And we'll discuss that in the board to see if we can do that. Yes, sir.
Did you add artificial reefs to the priorities list? The reason is we have some nice reefs up and down the bay, but if you look at them in total, only 8% of the total area has anything on it. So we have nice reefs.
So you're saying that we need more funding to keep the reef material to keep adding more reef material to the reefs we have. I agree. They haven't really, even though John Bull made it sound like we continue to, put more stuff down. I think that's a program that's really lacking, artificial reef program.
We should have asked him how much he put down this year. I think you'd been surprised.
Yeah, excellent one. And I'm a big believer in the artificial reefs too, because I use them. And even the bluefish rock reef, which I think is the newest one we've had, even what they put down is starting to sink into the mud now, and you can almost barely see the structure when you're fishing it. So they need to add more stuff.
If you could, see me after the meeting, Alicia Nelson was appointed about 6 months ago to take over the reef program at VMRC. And if you talk to her, I can give you her phone number. Okay.
He knows her.
All right. Okay. Yeah, because
you know what? That's news to me. I didn't realize she's taking over Meyer's place.
Yes.
I don't know that's going to, okay.
They took Mike Meyer's salary. I don't need that. They took Mike Meyer's salary, incorporated it into the VMRC budget, and co-assigned that detail to her for the RFP.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. The question I asked him earlier. Any of the money that's being rated from RFAB monies, is there any chance of that being returned to the RFAB fund, because they've been taking it to fund activities that were formerly funded by general. Oh yeah, look at the money we lost on artificial reefs when Meyer never put anything out. That was going to the tune of a couple $100,000 a year. Boom, 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 going to other causes. So thank you, Frank. I didn't realize it was only 8%. I think that's an excellent statistic. All right, here we have another point.
The only reason we ask for the microphone is because the people that are online won't hear you if you don't have the microphone.
To that
we
end,
have a small number of people listening in online.
To that end, I'd offer a consideration that you look at a potential grant writer where VSSA as a 501c3 organization might solicit grant money in which we could maybe identify the old, or identify organizations that could contribute and maybe work with VMRC to put in a VSSA reef somewhere.
Excellent point.
Thank you. That is a good point.
Free
All right,
money.
guys, we're looking for things that ought to be
Free
our
money is always
priorities
good.
here.
Yeah, on that note, about the grant writer and things, we need to keep building our contacts of people, like a grant writer if you know one, and they'd be willing to talk, because we obviously don't have a ton of background on all these issues. And same with academia. We want to build that relationship with the colleges and universities, and I think students, one of our priorities should be student interns to help the government affairs committee, like a fisheries management student that monitors a listserv that can give us a report. But any contacts in academia, like, I think we should compile a list of them, of good contacts that we can use.
Okay. I do have one more, a couple on the yellow card here. I think from these are yours, Stan. It'd be nice to have more press people attend our events, including this one, and I will, and that's a good point. And we have been solely lacking in trying to generate press interest, and we've only done marginally well. It would have been nice to have someone from the press come here and do something, even if it's just a small article. But
Part of outreach would be to develop a list of reporters at the different press areas that would be listening.
Yeah.
Would be welcoming of input.
Yeah, that's actually one of our.
We need a volunteer to run that whole press thing. Would you be interested?
We're trying to form a communications subcommittee too, so that sole purpose is to help us with our outreach, and we do need help, and we're not very good at that yet.
Yeah, there's 10 of us, guys. You can't shoot us yet.
And
Or excuse me, 12 now.
another yellow card from Stan. Annual banquet. Does it have to be in February, March, when it seems like all the clubs are having banquets? You know, this is one of the things we talked about is what is the format of our annual meeting and when is the annual meeting? And we discussed this at length, and we don't have a good answer. We grappled even with this format here for a while. We had a special meeting just on how do we want to handle the elections in an annual meeting. Talked about a banquet. We talked about having our own exhibit, tackle where vendors come in, like a flea market kind of thing, having our own Visa one where we bring it in, and it's not just a flea market, but it's, first-class vendors, and having our own seminars. We've ran through the whole list of how we want to handle this annual event, and next year's annual meeting might be a completely different format. So we're any and all input is welcome on that one too.
That's one of the things we actually have a subcommittee working on, and Murphy's leading up that committee. We also have to be careful. One of our objectives is not to compete with the fishing clubs. So, when you start, I know most of the clubs don't even meet then, and it's probably a good time to do it. But the point I want to make is we do have a committee that's already working on that. They'd love to have your help. So would the to-be-formed communications committee.
We just didn't want to get into the fishing months. We're starting in April through, really December is prime fishing months. And so any weekend you pick, people are out fishing. And so that leaves you with January, February, and March. And so that's kind of led us to this. But that's all the other clubs are doing their banquets and other things in the same time period. So probably for the same reason.
Yeah, let me just say something before we break up here. We all appreciate everyone's participation today. It's really important. I joined this effort last year in March, and I was ecstatic to see it come about. Guys, I mean, you know yourself, fishermen, if you are fishermen, I assume everyone is, that we really, really need an organization to look out for the recreational angler. There's no doubt about it in my mind. The effort that we're making on cobia is significant. If we don't get involved or didn't get involved in this effort, believe me, we would have nothing. We need to work with VMRC on that and every other issue. Please, I beg you, when you leave here today, I have 5 pads out there. If you could just give us your name and phone number and anything any ideas. We're not going to put you to work 7 days a week or 24 hours a day. We just want your ideas, your input for these committees. You got a lot of good ideas here today. It's important to us. We are listening, and we want this thing to work, but we need help. Can you see that? We need help. Sign up. Give us your name, phone number. We'll call you. These committees will probably meet occasionally by telephone to get something going. We need a funds committee. If you got any ideas, let us know. Thank you, guys.
I think they got the message, Bob. I had one more question on the yellow card. Is about the message board and who has access. Anyone. You don't even have to be a member to sign up on the board, right?
You have to sign up.
It's like any message board. You have to register, and we are actually asking people to sign on with your real names versus,
ifishvirginia.org. There's a link right to the message board. You don't have to be a member to use it. As Jerry was saying, not broadcasting into the mic, we are asking for real names instead of screen names, just so we know who we were communicating with.
We would like to get away.
We encourage you to use that. ifishvirginia.org. ifishva.org, excuse me.
Yeah, the message board is actually tidewaterfishing.net, but the link is on our website. And we would like to get away more from tidal fish. There's a lot of people on tidal fish that, they just get on soapboxes, all they do, and they don't really help anything. Okay, guys, it's 12:05. Any more thoughts? One here?
Yeah, I would like to see a size limit added for grouper, put on our list of priorities for in-state waters. Last year, for the first time in my life, there were significant quantities being caught in the bay. I saw a fair amount of boats that were keeping 9-inch grouper, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, if you bottom fish anywhere along the bridge tunnel all summer, they're small gag groupers, only about that big, and they kind of
pile of them
catch
down
them,
there.
and they come up just like croaker and oyster toads. I actually brought that up to Finfish, and told Finfish, I requested Finfish put it on their agenda to think about. Because right now, you got to have the permit for groupers, part of your tile fish grouper permit, but there's no size limit. But in the past, you'd only catch a grouper out on the canyon or the shelf, and they're big. But now you're catching a small gag grouper, and they're keeping them. And so the thought was we should have, in the regulation, we'll read something like, if a grouper caught in state waters, it has to be so big. Yeah. So that if they caught a little baby gag grouper that big, they would have to release it. I would love to see eventually a gag grouper fishery in the Chesapeake Bay. That'd be awesome, like they have in Florida.
And one more thing is that last week at the Great Bridge Flea Market, while we were there, great event, tremendous amount of interest. We did have some folks comment that they thought that there was an awful lot of emails that were coming in. So we might want to look at how we can manage that, and maybe it's a matter of getting a lot of the emails that we're sending out. Maybe we put those up on our website in some type of a forum there, and we just send out maybe it's a once a week or something else. But I would recommend that if we could get 2 or 3 members that are willing to take a look at that, and along with that, look at helping Jerry out with the website and stuff, because I don't want to put too much work on him if we're going to be trying to manage and adding and moving stuff around on that site.
That was emails from us? Too many emails from us?
That was a comment from a couple of folks.
Well, I mean, there is a way to do that you do. Well, you're getting the board member emails too, but there's also board member emails, and there's also the Visa communications to all the members. And there are things we could do if it was considered a problem. We could have a digest. So if we sent 5 emails, you'd only get it once a week or once a month, however and that the user could go back and select. There's programs that would do that, so that But some things are timely, though.
Some of that may be generated if they friended us on Facebook and we post on the Facebook page, then doesn't that trigger a Gmail social notification or something? I mean, I don't think we've.
I think what Jerry is seeing is board email. There's a tremendous amount of it. It's not outside
Okay.
board.
All right, I'll shut up.
But there is things we could do also with the visa emails too to make them. Maybe they would go out. We would still send the email, but the user would only get it whenever he designates. There's programs that allows that to do that. We could look at that. But now I agree. I mean, just. Yeah.
Maybe once a week, when you put out the message about the board meeting on Thursday, put it in there, y'all maybe put a little thing in there, put out between the Thursday. If I want to go look at something more in detail, I can go out to iFish, wherever, and look at it.
Well, what you're getting is you're getting all of our internal board emails now, and so and everybody loves the reply all button.
Yeah, everybody's hitting reply all, and what we really need to do is quit using that reply all button.
Well, let's talk about that on the board and how we can communicate better. That's an internal board thing.
Hey, Mike, one of the suggestions earlier was that we have a top 2 or 3, and recognizing what time it is there any chance that we could come to a top 2 or 3 fisheries with this group? I mean, Are you saying I shouldn't even go there?
I think it takes time to think about it. I mean, rather than just spur of the moment, let's vote on 2. I think it's too quick.
All right, I heard enough. They're saying, all right, here, I'm going to throw this out to you all. How about you all thinking about what the top 3 fisheries are, and sometime within the next month or so, we will put something out asking for that back. So for the 2 club presidents that are now on the board that want to go to their club and want to have time to do things, one of the things that we're going to be looking for are what are the top 3 fisheries that we should be focusing on in the state of Virginia. Issues. Okay.
So he wants to do, maybe we did like a rec campaign, and we're going to do rec awareness. He could go back to his club and say, they're doing a rec campaign, and they're doing like a grassroots monitoring campaign for menhaden. Not necessarily they're watching this fish very actively. Is that right, Mike?
Anyone else? It essentially comes back to the top 3 issues as opposed to the top 3 fisheries. You may only have 2 fish and then 1 issue. One issue may be getting recreational anglers involved in the menhaden campaign. So the top 3 issues. Good input, by the way. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we just wanted to make sure the purpose of this town hall is to capture the issues, not necessarily solve them all. So when we capture an issue, there's lots of work ahead to, hey, what do we want to do about it? How would we best go about accomplishing that? There's a lot of stuff behind each one of these. I know it's getting late in the day. We purposely didn't want to go over lunch and have a lunch break and have to come back. We were just gonna end before lunch. Any other questions? You got anything online, Doug? That anybody's posted anything? Nope. Any other questions for us? So any other issues that anyone wants to talk about? Well, then I make a motion that we adjourn, and I greatly appreciate everyone taking the time to come out and participating. We're gonna take this whole video, even though it's like 3 hours long, and I'll upload it to YouTube, and you guys and whoever wants to and whoever cares to can listen, and they can hear John Bull talk too. So you can share the video with club members and other members, and so we're going to get a copy of the video. I don't think it'll be on this link. I asked the guy here running it, Bob, his name, will it be on that same link, and he said no, but he's going to send us the video so that anyone who wasn't here or even listening live, they could still at least listen to it after the fact and hear what went on. And so,
and I do have his slides electronically, so I'm assuming we can possibly put that up on the board so that somebody that was mentioned to me twice that they would like to have copies of it. We will make it available on our board. I second your motion to adjourn, and I would like to thank everyone for coming. Thank you very much on behalf of the Virginia Saltwater Sport Fishing Association. Thank you.
And come out, don't pass me up and sign up for a committee. Thank you. I'm still trying.